Thick, hot liquid runs down my arm. Blood. Funny. I don't remember the guard nicking me with his sword before my fist connected with his face. Despite being a flash, he apparently couldn't manage to move faster than my right hook to his jaw. The smell of soot stings my nose, forcing me to clamp a grimy hand over it to stop a sneeze from slipping out. That would be a very pathetic way to get caught. When I'm sure that my nose won't alert the imperials lurking beneath where I'm hiding, I return my hand to the filthy wall my back is currently pressed against, with my feet planted opposite me. After taking a deep breath that nearly has me choking on soot, I slowly begin my climb upwards once again. With thighs burning almost as much as my nose, I force my body to continue shimmying while stifling the sneeze. Climbing up a chimney isn't exactly how I thought I would be spending my evening. The small space has me sweating, swallowing my fear before scrambling to the top of the cramped corridor, eager to replace grime-caked walls with a starry night. When my head finally peeks over the top, I greedily gulp down the sticky air, then climb up and over, immediately bombarded with a new concoction of smells far more unpleasant than the stench of soot clinging to my body, my clothes, my hair. Sweat, fish, spices, and I'm quite certain some sort of bodily fluid blends to create the aroma that surrounds Loot Alley. Balancing atop the chimney, I strain my eyes on the shadowed roof to inspect my sticky arm. I'd nearly forgotten to examine it without the usual biting pain that accompanies a sword slash to remind me. I rip off a strip of cloth from the sweaty tank that clings to my body, dabbing at the gash with it. Adena's going to kill me for ruining her stitching. Again. I'm surprised when I don't feel the familiar twinge of pain as I rub at my arm with the rough fabric, impatiently sopping up the stickiness. And that's when I smell it. Honey. The same honey that belongs to the sticky buns oozing out of the many pockets in my ragged vest and dripping down my arm. Mistaken for blood. I sigh, rolling my eyes at myself. It's a welcome surprise, nonetheless. Even honey soaking my clothes beats trying to wash blood out. I take in a deep breath and look out over the crumbling, run-down buildings cast in shadows by the flickering lampposts dotting the street. There's not much electricity here in the slums, but the king generously spared us a few lampposts. Thanks to the Volts and Scholars using their abilities to create a sustained power grid, I have to work exceptionally hard to stay in the shadows. Farther from the slums, the more the rows of shops and homes slowly improve in condition and size. Shacks turn into homes, homes turn into mansions, leading up to the most daunting building of all. Squinting through the darkness, I can just barely make out the looming towers of the royal castle and the sloping dome of the bowl arena that resides beside it. My eyes flick back to the wide street stretched out before me, scanning the surrounding sketchy buildings. Loot Alley is the very heart of the slums, pumping crime and trade throughout the city. I trace the dozens of other alleys and streets jutting off from it, getting lost in the maze that is the city before offering a sigh and small smile to the familiar street beneath me. Home. Sort of. Technically, a home implies that one has a roof over their head, but stars are far more fun to stare at than a ceiling. I would know, seeing that I used to have a ceiling to stare at every night, back when I had no need for the stars to keep me company. My traitorous gaze sweeps across the city to where I know my former home lies, wedged between Merchant and Elm Streets, where a happy little family is likely sitting around the dinner table, laughing and discussing their day with one another. I hear a thump, followed by the murmuring of voices that drag me from my bitter thoughts. Straining to hear, I can just make out the muffled, deep voice that belongs to the guard I so kindly relieved of his duties a short while ago. Came up right behind me, quiet as a mouse, and then the next thing I know, I get a tap on the shoulder and a fist to the face. A very irritated and very shrill female voice echoes up the chimney. You're a flash? For plague's sake, aren't you supposed to be fast or something? She takes a deep breath. Did you at least get a look at his face before you let him rob me? Again? All I saw were his eyes, the guard mumbles. Blue. Very blue. The woman huffs in irritation. How helpful. Let me just stop every person en route to see if their eyes match your vivid description of very blue. I stifle my snort as something creaks from the other end of the room, followed by a chorus of muffled footsteps. From the groan of rotting wood shifting beneath several new pairs of boots, I immediately deduce that 3 more guards have joined the hunt. And that's my cue. I hop off the chimney and grab onto the raised ledge of the roof, swinging my legs over the side to dangle above the street. Blowing out a breath, I let go and bite my tongue against a yelp as gravity yanks me towards the ground. With a soft thud, I drop ungracefully into a merchant's wagon brimming with hay. The stiff straw pokes through my clothes like one of Adena's pincushions, and a cloud of soot and hay rises on the night breeze when I jump out onto the street. Passing the time by plucking straw from my tangled hair, I begin my journey back to the fort, weaving through beat-up merchant carts, all abandoned for the night, feet dancing over trash and broken trinkets. Looters slumped against alleys or tucked in between buildings whisper among themselves as I pass. I feel the weight of the dagger tucked into my boot and relax at the comfort of the cool steel as I pass groups of fellow homeless huddling together for the night. I can see the faint shimmer of purple force fields shielding some, while others don't even have an ability strong enough to allow them to sleep peacefully, which is the exact reason they call the slums their home. I keep my steps swift and sure as my eyes sweep back and forth across the alleys, never letting my guard down. The poor don't discriminate. A shilling is a shilling, and they don't care if they jump someone worse off than them to get it. Several guards cross my path as I zigzag down streets, forcing me to slow down to steer clear of them. Every shop, corner, and street has been bestowed the gift of leering, white-uniformed law enforcers. These brutal imperials have been stationed everywhere, along Loot Alley by decree of the king due to an increase in crime. Clearly has nothing to do with me. I slip down a smaller alley, making my way towards the dead end. There, tucked in the corner, is a mangled barricade of broken merchant carts, cardboard, old sheets, and plague knows what else. Before I'm even halfway to the pile of garbage we call home, a face obscured by wild shoulder-length curls pops up over the fort. Did you get it? Untangling her long legs from where she sits, she effortlessly stands and phases right through the 3-foot wall of our trash barricade without a second thought. And then she's bounding toward me, with so much hope in her eyes that you'd think I've offered her a real roof over her head and a warm meal. And though I can give her neither of those things, I do have something far better in her opinion. I sigh. I'm offended you doubted me, Adena. I thought you'd have a little more faith in my abilities after all these years. I sling my pack from my back and pull out the crumpled red silk from within, unable to suppress my smile as a look of awe settles on her face. She greedily claws the silk from my hands, running her fingers through the soft folds of the fabric. Peeking up through the curly bangs hanging in her hazel eyes, she looks at me as though I've just single-handedly irradiated the plague, rather than steal fabric from a woman not much better off than we are. Like I'm the hero and not the villain. Adena's smile could rival the sun over the scorches desert. Paedyn, you and your sticky fingers work magic. You know that? She throws her arms around my neck, pulling me into a crushing embrace that causes more honey to ooze down my vest and pool in my pockets. Speaking of sticky fingers, I peel myself from her hug to fish around in my pockets. I retrieve 6 smashed sticky buns, only slightly unappetizing with the hay now decorating them. Adena's eyes go wide at the sight, before snatching one from my hand just as greedily as she did the fabric. She turns mid-bite and strides right back through our fort without a second thought, plopping herself down on the colorless, rough rugs that lay on the inside of the barricade. She pats the spot beside her expectantly, and unlike her, I ungracefully leap over the wall before I can take a seat. I bet Maria wasn't too happy about her shop being looted. Again. Poor thing should really up her security, Adena says between bites, a crooked smile joining the crumbs on her face. Despite my robbing the woman at least once a month for the past several years, she still only managed to conclude that I am a he. At least she's trying. Actually, I say with a shrug, she had 2 more imperials stationed around her shop than normal. She must be getting tired of all the stolen sticky buns over the years. Adena narrows her hazel eyes at the sight of my smile. Thank the plague you didn't get caught, Peyton. As soon as the familiar phrase slips past her lips, my jaw sets instinctively while hers falls open mid-bite. She visibly cringes, her brow crinkling and throat clearing. Sorry. Bad habit. My fingers drift to the thick ring on my thumb, spinning it mindlessly while I muster a weak smile. This topic is one we typically try to avoid, though it's my fault the subject became suddenly awkward to speak of in the first place, all due to a moment of weakness that I wish I wasn't so relieved about. You know it's not the words that bother me. It's the meaning behind them, she cuts in with a smile and a shockingly accurate imitation of my voice. I nearly choke on my laugh and a piece of sweet dough. Are you quoting me, Adena? By way of answering, she takes a bite of sticky bun before declaring between mouthfuls, and it's not the plague that makes you sick, it's what came after. I nod slowly while absent-mindedly tracing the rug's worn pattern beneath us, the feeling familiar beneath my finger. The idea of thanking the plague that killed thousands of aliens makes me lose my appetite for even sticky buns. Thanking the thing that caused so much pain and death and discrimination. But all anyone cares about now is who the plague didn't kill. The kingdom was isolated for years to keep the sickness from spreading to the surrounding cities, and only the strongest in Ilya survived the disease that altered the very structure of humans. The fast became exceptionally faster. The strong became unbeatable. And those who lurked in the shadows could become the shadows. Dozens of supernatural abilities were bestowed upon billions alone, all varying in strength, purpose, and power. Gifts given as a reward for surviving. They are elite. They are extraordinary. They are exceptional. Adena trails off, poking at her sticky bun while struggling to form words for once. Just be careful, Paedyn. If you get caught and aren't able to talk yourself out of it. I'll be fine, I state far too casually, ignoring the worry that washes over me. This is what I do, Adena. What I've always done. She sighs through her smile, waving a dismissive hand. I know. You can handle yourself with the elites. I feel that rush of relief once again, making me feel both guilty and grateful that she truly knows me. Because not all those who survived the plague were fortunate enough to be gifted with abilities. No, the ordinaries were just that, ordinary. And over the next several decades, following the plague, the ordinaries and elites lived in peace. Until King Edric decreed that ordinaries were no longer fit to live in his kingdom. It was over 3 decades ago when sickness swept through the land. Due to the outbreak of what was likely a common illness, the king's healers used the opportunity to claim that ordinaries were carrying an undetectable disease, saying it was likely the reason they hadn't developed abilities. Extended exposure to them became harmful to both elites and their powers. And over time, the ordinaries were dwindling the abilities elites are so protective of. I fight the urge to roll my eyes at the thought. My father believed that was bullshit, and I think no differently. But even if I had proof of the king lying through his teeth, it's not as though a girl from the slums is in any position to be believed. But the king couldn't allow his elite society to be weakened or worse by mere ordinaries. Extinction was not an option for the extraordinary. And so began the purging. Even now, decades later, tales of the bodies that scattered the sand under the scolding sun are casually passed around campfires, scary stories whispered among children. Sticky fingers close over mine, the honey coating Adena's hands as sweet as the spreading smile she shares with me. My secret is stowed in the glint of her eyes, in the loyalty lining her expression. I've spent so much of my life resigned to the fact that nothing would ever be real. Every friendship false, every kindness calculated. Hide your feelings, hide your fear, and most importantly, hide behind your facade. No one can know, Paedyn. Trust no one and nothing but your instincts. My father's gentle voice is oddly jarring as it echoes in my head, reminding me that every part of my life should be a lie, and the girl sitting before me should be as deceived as the rest of the kingdom. Selfishness only stole my sanity for a single night, but that was all it took for me to endanger the both of us. All right, enough talk of the plague, Adena says cheerily, scanning the alley before adding, "And your situation?" I don't bother stifling my snort. "It seems that 2 years haven't been enough time for you to practice subtlety, Adena." I doubt she even heard me. Doubt she can focus on anything other than the fabric now gliding between her fingers. With hazel eyes scanning over sewing supplies, Adena abandons our previous conversation to ramble about what pieces she'll be making with the new silk. Her warm brown hands dig through scraps of fabric in the flickering lamplight, beginning to fold edges, pin corners, prick fingers, curse relentlessly. We fall into the type of easy conversation that only comes after spending years surviving on the streets together, making it easy to interpret Adena's garbled words around the pins pressed between her lips. I roll over, finally falling quiet as I watch her steady fingers and furrowed brow, too engrossed with her work to sleep. A stabbing pain in my side has my drooping eyes flying open, drowsiness forgotten. The jagged stone jutting up from the alley floor has me groggily grumbling. Mark my words, I'm going to steal a cot one day. Adena rolls her eyes at me, just as she does every night I make the same empty promise. "I'll believe it when I feel it, Paedyn," she sing-songs. I've rolled over about a dozen times before a scratchy, balled-up blanket collides with my head. "If you don't quit your squirming, I swear I'll sew you to the bloody ground," Adena says, with all the sweetness of a sticky bun. "I'll believe it when I feel it, Adena." A ball of fire skims past my face, nearly singeing my hair off. I barely have the time to duck when I feel a second wave of heat rippling towards me. Plagues, Kit's in a lovely mood today. Dancing on the balls of my feet, I watch as another sphere of fire comes hurtling in my direction, as the familiar feel of adrenaline floods through me. I throw up a shield of water, hearing the fire hiss before it melts into nothing more than a thick cloud of steam. Kit squints, attempting to see me through the smoke before his eyes widen when I suddenly collide with him. We tumble to the ground as I pin him down, raising a flaming fist aimed at his face. Yield? I can't keep the smile from twitching my lips. He coughs out a laugh, his gaze flicking between my face and the blazing fist raised beside it. If I say no, are you really gonna punch me, little brother? Despite the fire burning mere inches from him, Kit's green eyes glint with amusement. I'd think you would know the answer to that by now. I smile slightly as I cock my fist back farther, posing to strike. All right. I yield, Kit sputters, but only because I wouldn't want poor Eli to have to set another one of our broken noses. I chuckle darkly at the thought of seeing the look on the royal physician's face if we were to stumble in with yet another broken bone. After standing to my feet, I offer a hand to Kit, who's still sprawled on the ground. The smile he gives me doesn't quite reach his eyes when he finally says, Plagues, Kai, you're better with my powers than I am. And that is why you will be ruling the country, I say simply, while I'll be fighting on the battlefield, distracting the enemy with my dashing good looks. Are you saying I couldn't distract the enemy with my own dashing good looks? Kit asks through his deep laughter, feigning offense. I'm saying that we are only half-brothers, so I'm afraid that means you only have half my charms. Kit barks out another laugh. By that logic, I suppose you only have half my brains then. Thank the plague for that. The words are barely out of my mouth before he's shoving me with a grin. We walk the worn path between the dirt training circles that reside on the castle grounds. Imperials in training and other elites of higher status continue their sparring as we pass, most using abilities while few use weapons. Heads turn towards us, their eyes burning my skin, mirroring the sun beating down on us from above. Ignoring the stares, I breathe in the training ground's familiar scent of literal blood, sweat, and tears before grabbing a sword from a weapons rack and tossing one to Kit, whose expression can only be described as exasperated. You know, I've always enjoyed fighting with weapons more than abilities, I say in answer to his pointed look, as I mindlessly test the balance of my blade. Kit saunters further into the muddy ring, all but rolling his eyes. Yes, I'm well aware of how much you love to beat down on me with a sword. I rotate my wrist, swinging my blade as we begin circling each other. It does happen to be one of my favorite hobbies, yes? I advance suddenly, swinging my sword down hard against his and sending a jolt up my arm. See, isn't this fun? Kit grits his teeth against my strike. Riveting. I fall into a familiar trance, letting my feet dance around the ring as we spar, getting lost in the rhythm. My mind clears. My body hums with energy. I've always felt most alive when I fight. It's what I was made to do, what has kept me sane over the years of training and tutoring. A dim-witted king is a dead king. Father's words ring through my mind, having been drilled through my skull after every complaint about my tedious lessons as a boy. Though I won't have to worry about being a dead or dim-witted king, seeing that I won't be a king at all. And after arguing just that to Father, he kindly created a new saying for me to live by. A dim-witted enforcer is a defeated empire. Encouraging. A sharp pain sears up my forearm, dragging me from my thoughts with a jolt. Better get your head in the game, Kai, or I might actually beat you. Kit has a look of triumph on his face that I intend to wipe off. I wouldn't want my future enforcer slacking on the Joe. Before he can even finish his remark, I'm pushing his sword to the ground and pinning it under my own before swiveling behind him. In one swift motion, I kick my boot up, sliding a dagger from it to settle the sharp tip against his back. I'm sorry. What was that, Your Majesty? I release my hold on him, and he turns as I sweep into a mocking bow while tucking the dagger back into my boot. That earns me a solid shove that nearly has me staggering, one I return in kind while Kit chuckles. His dirty blonde hair is far more dirty than blonde at the moment, splattered with chunks of mud from rolling around in the ring. Our shirts have long been abandoned in the summer heat, and, like me, sweat slicks his tanned chest. It's almost comical how obvious it is that we're only half-brothers. Other than our physical differences, I lack Kit's caring, like he lacks my callousness. He's patient, personable, and fit for the throne like I'm fit for the battlefield. A king where I am a killer. Kai, are you even listening to me? Kit looks equally concerned and amused as he snaps his fingers in front of my face. Plagues. How much blood did you lose? I follow his gaze to see rivulets of red trailing from the wound on my arm, blood weaving between my knuckles and dripping from my fingertips. Well, looks like Eli won't be getting the day off after all, thanks to you. I glance up at Kit, expecting a remark only to find his gaze fixed on something across the grounds. Now look who's not paying attention. My eyes stray to the figure strutting towards us, training leathers clinging to her every curve and lilac hair whipping in the wind. Bitchy Blair, I breathe under my breath before she reaches us, causing Kit to choke on a laugh. Hello, boys. Her voice is like ice, cold and smooth. How's the training coming? Her gaze sweeps lazily over the both of us, before returning to our faces with a slight smirk, twisting her lips. Getting ready for the trials, Kai? Not that I need to prepare. A slow smile creeps onto her face at that. I would think the future enforcer would want to make a good impression on the kingdom by winning. She's suddenly very interested in her nails, feigning nonchalance. I run a hand through my hair with a bored sigh. And I plan on doing just that. She gives me a smile that's anything but sweet. I would hope so, seeing that you're the best elite in decades. Or so they say. Plagues, here we go. Kit takes a step forward and puts a hand to his chest like he's been wounded. Ouch, Blair. I'll remember that comment when I'm king. Ah, did I wound your pride, Kit? She offers him a fake pout before turning her attention back on me. Besides, I personally think I'll be winning the trials. I huff out a humorless laugh before peering down at her small form. And what makes you so sure you'll even be competing? I say this knowing full well that she will, in fact, be in the trials. With a flick of her wrist, a dagger flies from the weapons rack in response to my comment. Before I can blink, it's suddenly suspended in the air and digging into my jugular. As the daughter of the general, she steps towards me until there are mere inches between us, and whispers, I think I have a pretty good shot of getting into the games. Don't you? She giggles even while pressing the floating knife to my throat, further proving her point. The buzz of dozens of powers pounds through my blood, all belonging to the other individuals training in the courtyard. I force the other abilities to fall silent, focusing on Blair's power and the feel of it humming beneath my skin, urging me to grab hold of it. She's a powerful tele, and her demonstration with this dagger is the least of what she can do with her mind. I reach out to that tingling feeling that is her ability, and let it wash over me, claw to the surface, and then I become it. Just as I did with Kit's dual power of fire and water, and just as I can do with any one of the abilities surrounding me. My smile is cold as I flip the floating dagger in midair, pushing it against the tough leather covering her heart with nothing but my mind. Well, then you better get training, I say quietly, before loosening my hold on her ability, letting the dagger fall to the ground with a thud. I don't bother saying anything more before I turn and stride towards the castle. Kit falls silently into step beside me, seemingly just as lost in thought as I am, as we make our way back through the castle gates. With the trials only 2 weeks away, it seems I'm no longer able to blissfully ignore their existence and my role within them. The smell of roasting chicken and potatoes wafting from the kitchens is enough to steal my attention. I shoot a glance at the abnormally quiet Kit before turning to stride through the kitchen doors. Afternoon, ladies. I flash a quick smile at the cooks and servants milling around the kitchen as they prepare dinner. Miss me? I croon, lifting myself up onto a hard counter and leaning back on my palms. I catch the eyes of a few servant girls before they redden and turn back to their work, exchanging giggled whispers with one another. The heat of the kitchen hits me like a wave, washing over me and coating my already slick skin. My skin. I run a hand through my hair before running it down my face, unbothered by the realization that I've been walking around without a shirt, after abandoning it in the filthy ring, a habit even father hasn't been able to break. Kit's head pops around the corner, a grin splitting his face. I thought I smelled my favorite dish. You're such a sweetheart, Gail. He strides over to the cook, stirring a pot full of creamy potatoes over the sweltering stove, her dark skin glistening with sweat. She can't help but smile at the look lighting Kit's face. Oh, don't think I did this for you, kitty. Mashed potatoes happen to be my favorite as well. She smiles, patting him on the cheek before turning to continue her stirring. Her eyes meet mine from where I sit atop the counter, before darting to my arm, and the wound I'd forgotten was still bleeding there. With a shake of her head, she says sternly, "You better not get blood on my counter, Kai." I crack a smile at that. This wouldn't be the first time. She shakes her head at me again, fighting a smile all the while. Gail's been slipping us extra food and treats since we were boys running around the castle with half our clothes on, which we clearly still do. She's witnessed far more than one fight unfold in this very kitchen over who gets the last of her sticky buns. "You two haven't visited me in a while," she says, adding seasoning to her potatoes. "Getting sick of me? Yes, but never your food." The words have barely left my mouth before a glob of potatoes comes flying at my face. I don't have the time or energy to duck before the mash joins the matted mud and dirt. Never a dull moment with us, is there? Kit muses from where he's leaning against a ledge, watching as I pull at the potatoes clinging to my hair. I hop off the counter and stride over to the cook, giving her a peck on the cheek. "Always a pleasure, Gail." I reach around her to grab an apple from its basket as I say, "I look forward to our next food fight." After tossing one to Kit, I rub my own apple on my pants before taking a bite. "Prince Kai?" I stiffen, sigh, and turn towards the voice behind me. A young boy looks up nervously, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. I raise my eyebrows, my impatience evident. "The king requests your presence in the throne room." The wheel of a merchant's cart rolls over my toes. I bite back a yelp, but don't bother biting back my rather rude retort directed at the oblivious man who's mindlessly crippling people with his cart. Well, today's off to a great start. I slept fitfully last night, tossing and turning as I faded in and out of my recurring nightmares. Flashes of my father dying while I can do nothing but hold his hand. Climbing up a chimney only to find the top boarded up. And Adena, the only person I have left in this world, being dragged away from me screaming. Sometime between my numerous nightmares, Adena made a feeble attempt to shake me awake. I rolled over, groaning, trying to cling to the little bit of blissful sleep I managed to steal. I may be the thief, but I'm regularly robbed of rest. Persistent per usual, Adena then switched her strategy, deciding to pelt me with rough scraps of fabric until I finally raised a white cloth in surrender. The sun, lazy as ever, is slowly struggling to peek over the run-down buildings, casting Loot Alley in morning shadows, while I make my way down the cobblestone path. As the street comes alive with the hustle and bustle of merchants haggling, while beggars plead with anyone who spares them a glance, I easily blend into the chaos that surrounds the slums. My hands itch to snatch some food to quiet my grumbling stomach and to bring back for Adena. My eyes flick across the street in search of my next unfortunate victim to rob when something's not right. There are only 14 imperials lining the street, but there should be at least 16 today. I would know, seeing that I've memorized their rotations. I spot Egghead and Hook Nose in their usual spots outside of Maria's shop, along with several other imperials with equally accurate names. With the white leather masks obscure half their faces from view, it's rather difficult to come up with creative nicknames for the bastards, so I pride myself on the few I've invented. Normally, the prospect of fewer guards would be a relief, and perhaps it's my psychic abilities kicking in, but the sight worries me. My stomach growls angrily, impatient as ever. Food first, funny feeling second. I zigzag through the crowd with ease, swiping apples from the cart that ran over my toes, the revenge as sweet as the crisp fruit I bite into. Leaning against the crumbling wall of a shop, I spot what looks to be a young apprentice haggling with a tradesman. I watch as he fixes the merchant with a glare before throwing down several coins and snatching up a bundle of what can only be black leather. My eyes skim over the shillings as they roll on top of the cart, counting them quickly to find far too many coins there for leather. He's in a hurry. That's why he's willing to pay double what he should, rather than take the time to negotiate a cheaper price. And he has the money to spare. The perfect target. I step onto the street and head for the boy, now quickly shoving through the crowd, while I pull at the leather strap, holding my hair out of my face and off my neck. It falls down my back in a cascade of messy silver waves, while I curse the sweltering heat that already has my neck sticky with sweat. Letting a curtain of hair fall over my shoulder and into my face, I morph myself into the perfect picture of innocence. Make them underestimate you. Make them overlook you until you want to be seen. It's been so long since I've heard my father's voice that the soft sound of it threatens to slip from my memory and drift into death with him. The thought shatters when we collide. I stumble, scrambling to grab hold of the unsuspecting apprentice as I let myself fall. Gathering a fistful of his shirt in one hand, I slip the other into his vest pocket, where I saw him grab his coins. I can feel 6 shillings there and resist the urge to grab all of them before only palming 3. Greed is not an easily tamed emotion, but I force myself to leave the other coins, knowing that he's likely smart enough to feel the lack of weight in his pocket if I take them all. And I don't need to add any more scars to my back for getting caught. But right as I'm about to pull out my hand and ramble an apology for nearly running the boy over, my fingers catch on the inside lining of his vest. No, not just the lining, a secret pocket. I feel a folded piece of parchment within, and on an impulse I can't explain or justify, decide to palm that too before sliding my hand out and shyly looking up into the apprentice's face. His brown eyes are wide as I stare up at him through the strands of hair blowing across my face. I arrange my expression into that of utter embarrassment and quickly uncurl my fist from his shirt. Blowing a strand of hair from my eyes, I take a step back to put some space between us. I am so sorry, sir. I force myself to sound breathless, embarrassed, harmless. I'm quite certain I am the only person in all of Ilya who is capable of tripping on air. Go on. Underestimate me. Overlook me. He runs a hand through his curly hair and chuckles. No worries. Guess you have quite the talent then. He wears a smile, but his gaze lingers a little too long for my liking. So, I offer him a grin and a nod of my head before turning on my heel and vanishing into the crowded street. The sugary scent of sticky buns wafts down the busy alley as I stroll past Maria's shop and sidestep into one of the many small alleys branching off loot. The note I nicked grows damp with sweat as I grip it in my palm. What could possibly be written on this little piece of paper that warrants it to be so hidden? I intend to find out. Flattening my back against the grimy brick wall, I unfold the edges of the paper to reveal a scribbled note. Meeting begins midquarter midnight. White House between Merchant and Elm. Bring the supplies. I stare at the note, blinking in confusion while my heart races in anticipation. That's my house. Well, that was my house. I can tell by the slant of the letters and the smudging of the ink that whoever wrote this was likely in a hurry to hide the note from prying eyes. Prying eyes like mine. Dozens of questions flood my mind, each one more confusing than the last. Why on this plague-forsaken earth are meetings being held at my house? Former house. You left it, remember? And to meet there in the middle of the night with supplies? The leather. I trip over the uneven cobblestone, ripping me back to reality, and the realization that I've been pacing this whole time. I shove the crumpled note back into my vest, mind still reeling as I step out onto the busy street, now bathed in sunlight. I shake my head, trying to clear it as I push through the throng of people bartering, gossiping, and cursing. Beginning to wind through the merchant carts once again, I fall into the familiar rhythm that is my honest occupation. Thieving. My mind wanders as I work, leaving me to wonder whether Adena is having any luck selling her clothes on the other end of the long street. I steal, she sews. And that's been our lives for the past 5 years. I was barely 13 and utterly alone in the world when Adena quite literally ran into me. Well, she phased right through me. I'll never forget the look on the imperial's face as he sprinted after her, screaming about stolen pastries. And without a second thought, I didn't hesitate before sticking my foot out into his path. As soon as I got a glimpse of the guard's face meeting the pavement, I was chasing after the gangly, curly-haired girl who ran right through me. An uneasy alliance was born that day, one that was supposed to stay that way. My hand freezes midair, hovering over a plump grapefruit, when a chilling scream cuts through the mayhem of loot. I twist around, fruit forgotten, searching through the throng of bodies to find the source of the noise. My eyes scan the crowd before snagging on a small, slumped figure crumpled against a wooden pole stained red at the center of the street. An imperial hovers over the small boy, whip in hand, looking disgustingly pleased with himself as he stares down at the child. I know that look all too well. I've been that bleeding child far too many times. He got caught. I wonder what it was that he stole. What it was that could possibly justify such a beating. Some fruit? Maybe a few shillings from a merchant? I remember slumping up against the wooden pole, shaking with the pain caused by each crack of the whip, while I bit my tongue to keep from crying out. The pain fades, but the scars remain as a reminder to do better. The young ones always get caught. They're needy. They haven't learned to control their greed or live with their hunger yet, making them easy targets for the imperials to use as an example. There's nothing you can do for him. I have to beat those words into my head to ensure my feet don't find their way to the boy. Because I tried once. Tried to step in and help a little girl who reminded me of myself. So scared, and yet so determined to never show it. When she looked up at me, the fire in her gaze reflected my own. In the end, my attempt to help only ended with extra lashings for the both of us. I grimace and quickly turn away from the gruesome scene, only to get a mouthful of starchy, crumpled uniform when I slam into the lowlife wearing it. The imperial stares down at me, amusement flickering in his eyes surrounded by that white mask. Though he looks to be at least 10 years my senior, blonde hair sticking up at odd angles, he takes his time lazily trailing his gaze over my body. I bite my tongue before I can say something he'll likely make me regret. Imperials aren't known to be gentlemen when it comes to young girls, or to anyone for that matter, and I don't intend to find out if he is the exception. So sorry, sir. I seem to be madly clumsy today, I say, planning my escape into the crowd. A clammy hand wraps around my wrist and spins me back around. I summon every bit of strength I have to suppress the fighting instinct that screams at me to knee him in the groin and bash his head into the stones beneath our feet. Why in such a hurry? His toothy grin and black eyes send a shiver down my spine, and the foul stench of alcohol on his breath only adds to my unease. I smile and force myself to be polite as I shake out of his grasp. Just trying to run some errands before the market gets too crowded. That's all. He grunts, eyeing me skeptically. Say, what's your power, girl? I fight the urge to stiffen as he continues with a grin. By decree of the king, I'm to question anyone I feel. Should be questioned. He loves being in control, having power. I'm a mundane, I say simply, stating my tier on the elite's food chain to prove that I am of little threat and importance to him. A psychic. I look him right in his black eyes as I say it, willing his black heart to believe me. Is that right? I've never met a psychic before. He chuckles darkly and takes a step towards me, bending his head close to mine, so I get another whiff of the alcohol clinging to him. Prove it then. I'm growing quite tired of that demand. I meet the imperial's eyes, refusing to give him the satisfaction of thinking I'm concerned, though my pounding pulse proves otherwise. I'm sensing anger and regret from you. You've just split up with your wife. Well, actually, she left you. The look of utter shock on his face brings a small smile to my lips. And if you really want me to be specific, because, well, you told me to prove it, it's because you. I stop mid-sentence, squeezing my eyes shut while pressing fingers to my temple, putting on a convincing show. You cheated on her? Wait, I'm getting something else. I peek up at his face, now red with rage, as I continue rubbing my temple. You want her back. But she doesn't want you. I'm prepared for the backhand before I feel the sting of it across my face. Blood flies from my mouth, and I keep my head turned away from him as he growls close to my face. Bloody witch is what you are. Get out of my sight, mundane. I spin on my heel and smile, blood pooling in my mouth and dribbling down my chin. I force myself to stumble back into a cart, snatching some fabric hanging off the edge from behind my back. I turn around quickly, clutching the bundle to my chest as I tear off a corner with my teeth to wipe up my bloody mouth and chin. I'll use part of the fabric as a napkin, and the rest can go to Adena. 2 birds with 1 stone. Shoving the remaining cloth in my pack, now stuffed full of food, coins, and other stolen goods. I head back towards the fort, all while replaying the last 5 minutes over in my head. It wasn't hard to get under the imperial's skin, and I knew once I had, he'd slap me silly and let me scurry away. This wouldn't have been the first time I've let that happen, and proving my psychic abilities was hardly difficult, considering that the evidence was written all over him. The thin tan line on his now empty ring finger was my first clue that he was formally married. Then, there's the fact that he moved his wedding band to his other hand rather than pawning it off for money, telling me that he still cares for his ex-wife and is probably still pining over her. The disheveled hair, crumpled uniform, and smell of whiskey on his breath further prove that he is obviously a single man who no longer has a wife to make him look presentable. Men would likely go extinct without women to coddle them. As for the part where he cheated on his wife, well, that was more so an educated guess, based off the way he looked at me, along with the stellar reputation the Imperials have made for themselves. Clearly, the assumption hit a nerve before he hit me. The midday sun beats down on me as I make my way back to the fort to meet Adena for lunch. Just like always, I take my time meandering down loot, gnawing on an apple while hunger gnaws at me. The salty smell of fish basting in the sun atop merchant carts hangs in the air. Children scuttle in front of my path, laughing as they chase each other down the street. The sound of voices haggling and cursing is like a chorus to me, a tune I'm all too familiar with. A large colored banner catches my eye as it begins to rise above the crowded alley, strung between 2 shops by a crawler. He scurries up the wall as though there's glue on his palms and feet, allowing him to climb up the smooth shop with ease. As he secures the rope connecting the banner to the wall, I turn my attention to the words scrawled on the green tapestry in large black lettering. The 6th Purging Trials is about to begin. Remember the purging. Thank the plague. Honor to your kingdom, your family, and yourself. You could be the next victorious elite. I snort loudly, nearly choking on a chunk of my apple. Although the purging trials are nothing to laugh about, I can't help but find it comical that they are meant to be a celebration. In honor of the great purging over 3 decades ago, the trials were created to showcase the people's supernatural abilities and bring honor to the only elite kingdom. I wouldn't say murdering innocent people brings honor to me, my kingdom, or my family, not that I have any left to bring honor to. And yet, every 5 years, young elites are chosen to compete in these games, for both the glory and enough shillings to build your own comfy castle, while you try to escape the trauma the trials caused you. But the part that has me shaking with both laughter and rage is that the lesser elites, those with defensive and mundane abilities, are made to believe that they have a chance of winning these twisted trials. I feel suddenly numb as I look at the excited faces surrounding me, all crowding under the sign, grinning and pointing. We are the first to die. The elites who compete aren't chosen, but rather born into their fate. It's always those of royal blood or of higher status on the elite's tier of power. I scan the crowd, eyes skipping over the smiling faces of mundanes who are only thrown into the trials for entertainment after the king allows us to pick who we wish to represent us. Despite the king insisting that the killing of fellow elites in the arena is frowned upon, it's no secret that death itself is a contestant in the trials. Dying teenagers apparently make things exceptionally more entertaining, and if the elites won't do the killing, the king will pull the strings in the arena. I push through the throng of people gathered under the sign, all talking over one another about who will represent loot and what they would do with the prize money. There have been very few times in my life when I haven't envied the elites. But at the thought of competing in the Purging Trials, I've never been more thankful to be nothing and no one of importance. Completely ordinary. Are you gonna eat that? Adena is eyeing the half-eaten orange on my lap while I sit leaning against the alley wall behind the fort. Have at it. The words have barely slipped past my lips before she leans over, her curly hair blowing in the soft breeze as she snatches the fruit and pops a slice into her mouth. The imperial with the impressive backhand left me the lovely gift of a split bottom lip, making it difficult to choke down food. How'd you do today? I ask, while mindlessly spinning the thick silver wedding band on my thumb. The cold steel of my father's ring bites into my skin, comforting me like it always has. I suppose I'd have my mother's too if it weren't buried with her when I was a baby. Illness, Father had said. She was an ordinary, after all. And the lot of us are apparently weaker, diseased humans. But he married her anyway. Loved her despite it, protected her, kept her secret just as he did mine. Adena sighs, and I'm brought back to the present when she says between bites of orange, "Can't complain. Oh, I sold that top I had been working on for ages. For 3 whole shillings, too. You know, the green one with the deep neckline and scalloped hem?" I give her the same confused look I always do when she starts speaking in her sewing language. You're hopeless when it comes to clothes. I glance down at my battered tank beneath the olive green vest atop it. Everything changed the day Adena made me the pocketed vest, knowing that it would serve me well as a thief. That was the day an uneasy alliance began to blossom into an easy friendship. Adena taps a finger against her lips, considering something. I bet if you had on the right outfit, everyone would be too busy staring at you to even notice you're robbing them. I snort. I'd rather not have people staring while I'm committing crimes. That seems a bit counterproductive. I snatch up my dagger and tuck it into my boot, brushing my fingers along the swirling silver handle. It's the only other keepsake I have from Father besides his ring, both of which I never go without. I'm admiring the intricate handle for the 100th time before jolting, when I suddenly remember something. Be careful today. There are fewer guards out than usual for some reason, and I don't like it. I struggle to find the right words. Just keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary, okay? She looks slightly unsettled by this news, but the narrowing of her hazel eyes is playful. Is this your psychic juju warning you of potential danger? Yeah, we definitely need to work on your subtlety. I sigh, shaking my head at her with a smile. I stand to leave, groaning as I stretch out my sore body. Adena gathers her clothes, all varying in different sizes and colors, and reluctantly waves goodbye before heading back out onto loot, in the hopes of selling more items before sundown. I step out into the crowded street, now bathed in late afternoon sunlight, and head towards the buzz of the marketplace. I start off easy. First, nicking some fruit and fabric before growing bored and moving on to bigger and better items. Wallets, watches, and shillings are what I'm really after this evening. I spy a man with dark blue hair and a glittering watch adorning his thick wrist before quickly deciding to make him my next target. Peering down the packed street, I spot a few others with abnormally colored hair dotting the crowd. Evidence that a genetic-altering plague comes with more perks than just supernatural abilities. Though, even with the mop of silver hair atop my head, I still wasn't gifted a power to accompany it. It takes me far too long to escape the blue-haired man after stealing his watch. Not because he caught me, no, but because he wouldn't stop talking to me. After stumbling into him and slyly slipping the accessory from his wrist, it was clear the poor man was dying to spew gossip with anyone willing to smile and nod at him. I'm about ready to head in early and call it a decently successful night, when a tall figure, completely clad in black, strolls onto loot. He walks with an air of confidence, so at odds with the hunch that the homeless have adapted in the hopes of drawing as little attention to themselves as possible. But this man is making it difficult to look away. He wears a loose black button-down, tucked into slim black pants, and separated by a simple belt. His collared shirt is halfway unbuttoned, billowing open in the breeze to expose part of his tanned chest. His facial features are fuzzy from this distance, but his tar black hair falls over the top of his forehead in messy waves. With his hands buried in his pockets, his long strides carry him deeper into the market, looking cool and collected. He's not from here. I can see it in the way he looks around, as if taking it all in. It's likely he is an offensive, an elite of higher status or noble blood, who rarely sets foot into the slums. I can see in the way he walks, in the shine of his shoes, that this man will be carrying far more than a few measly shillings. I squint, trying to get an idea of where he might have slipped his silvers. There, swinging against his leg, attached from his belt with a strap, hangs a pouch that many aliens use to carry change. Specifically, the confident ones, seeing that an unguarded pouch is easy pickings for a thief. Easy pickings for me, my last unlucky target for the night. It's a good thing he's so bleeding tall, or I would have lost him in the swarm of people. I watch women of all ages crane their necks as he passes, trying to get a better view of the handsome stranger before he melts into the mass of people. I shove through the crowd and tail him until he steps out of the main path between merchant carts and onto a less crowded street. I shake out my hair, letting the long waves fall limply over my shoulders as I cut down a street, heading to cut him off. The back alley I zigzag through spits me out onto the same one the stranger strolled down, and now I am heading straight for him. I keep my eyes glued to the ground when we collide. Following my usual routine, I let myself stumble backward from the impact, fighting against every instinct screaming at me to plant my feet and stand my ground. Strong arms wrap around my waist to keep me from falling, leaving his money pouch open and exposed to lowlifes like me. I grab hold of the front of his shirt, acting as if I did so as a reflex to keep my balance. Really, I just needed a reason to have my hands so close to his body without looking suspicious. The starving boys from loot don't feel like this. The thought dissolves when I reach my hand into the pouch at his hip, my fingers deducing that there are at least 20 shillings casually hanging from this man's belt. He must be very confident in his abilities to walk around loot with so much. Well, loot. I'm tempted to rip off the pouch and run, knowing full well he'd catch me in about 3 long strides. But not knowing when I'll quite literally run into an opportunity like this again, I refuse to leave without at least half of what's in his bag. but he'll feel the weight difference if I take half. My mind is reeling. Then distract him. With all this plotting happening within a matter of moments, I quickly and quietly clutch half the coins in my fist before carefully pulling my hand out of the pouch as I steady myself against him. Then, I slowly tear my gaze from his partially exposed chest, where the edge of a dark tattoo peeks out behind the folds of his shirt. My eyes finally meet his. It's like looking into a storm. His eyes are the color of thunderclouds settling over Ilya, of smoke puffing from the chimneys overhead, of the stolen silver coins clenched in my fist. His black, long lashes are in total contrast with his steely gray eyes, now sweeping across my face. Shock raises his dark brows, tightens his sharp jaw, emphasizes his strong cheekbones. We stand there, staring at each other. I'm suddenly acutely aware of every place he's touching me. His strong arms are still wrapped around my waist and half holding me up, though his gaze feels like a caress in and of itself. I clear my throat as I remove my fisted hand from his shirt, revealing crumpled, fine fabric beneath before moving to step out of his hold. His lips twitch, allowing me to glimpse a dimple on his right cheek. He slowly slides his arms from my waist, releasing me as his hands catch on the rough bottom of my vest. Calluses. He's a fighter. Not that I need to be a psychic to figure that out, seeing that his physique makes that fact obvious. With the thought of him being a trained fighter and double my size in mind, I nonchalantly pull my hands behind me to hide the evidence of my crime. The coins slide silently into my back pocket as I take a deep breath, trying to pull myself together. Do you always fall into the arms of handsome strangers, or is this a new thing for you? His question displays that dimple again when a grin settles on his face, revealing white, straight teeth. No, only the cocky ones. I smile coolly while he looks at me like I'm a puzzle he's trying to decipher, amusement playing all over his face. Distract him. He chuckles and runs a hand through his ebony hair, only managing to make the waves messier. Gray eyes search mine as he says, "Well, looks like I've made quite the first impression then." "Yes," I say slowly, though I still haven't decided if it was a good or bad one yet. Keep his mind off the money and his focus on you. He shrugs, shoving his hands into his pockets, the perfect picture of cool indifference. I caught you, didn't I? Now it's my turn to laugh. He cocks his head slightly to the side as he peers down at me, the corner of his mouth tilted up. Leaning in, he adds, "Maybe you should consider that detail before you decide, darling." Plagues, a pretty boy with pretty words. Dangerous. His smoky eyes sweep across my face, once again looking at me as though I'm an intriguing riddle. I refuse to fidget under his gaze as I take a step backward towards the busy street. "I'll keep it under consideration, darling." I draw out the last word, mimicking him with a grin. His smile widens, displaying dimples on both of his cheeks. I force myself to ignore them as I add, "And thank you for saving me from eating cobblestone." I seem to be cursed with clumsiness. "Well, your clumsiness found me, so I'd hardly call it a curse," he says simply, now leaning against the wall, hands in pockets. I smile, unable to suppress the eye roll that accompanies it. I glimpse his grin one last time before spinning on my heel and walking back onto Loot Alley, disappearing into the crowd. My mind is reeling, replaying the observations I made of him as I make my way down Loot. The scars splattering his arms and the raw knuckles from a recent fight intrigued me the most, and it's almost a shame I won't discover the story that accompanies them. The thought of an offensive elite wearing scars almost brings a smile to my lips. Proof of weakness. I grab the coins in my back pocket, letting them clink in my palm with a triumphant smile. I doubt he'll be missing these. The collared shirt I throw on is scratchy and uncomfortable, making me suddenly miss the days when I was young, and it was socially acceptable to run around half naked, though that's never stopped me from doing it now. After slipping on one of my only pairs of shoes not currently caked in mud, I stride over to the door. I pass messy shelves that threaten to tip from the weight of far too many books, my desk that is currently covered in documents I'm avoiding, and the four-poster bed jutting out from the wall, the cause of several stubbed toes and incessant swearing. Sighing, I close the door on the comfort of my room, wishing desperately that I could dive onto my bed and sleep through dawn. Alas, duty calls, and it's best not to keep him waiting. I shove my hands into my pockets as I stroll down the white halls leading to the throne room. Late afternoon sunlight streams through the windows lining the corridor, causing the ornate paintings on the walls to glitter in the golden light. Far too soon for my liking, I round the corner and nod to the guards standing outside the throne room before pushing open the heavy doors. "Ah, Kai. It's about time." Father's deep voice echoes down the vast length of the throne room. Its walls are decorated with large, wide windows draped in dark green silk, Ilya's kingdom color, accompanied by the sculpted molding crawling up the walls and onto the ceiling. Currently, a long wooden table resides in the middle of the polished marble floor, where the king occupies the chair at the head. "Good, you put on a shirt." He sighs, but I see a slight smile in his eyes. "I considered telling the servant to add that detail to the message he gave you." "Oh, don't worry, Father. I won't make the mistake of showing up to the throne room without a shirt." Again, I memorize the hint of a smile on his face, not knowing the next time I'll see it. The next time I'll earn it. He's a brutal man, a brawny who is strong physically as well as mentally. He's stern, stubborn, and set in his ways, so seeing him offer even the faintest of smiles has me involuntarily returning a faint one of my own. Our dynamic together has always been difficult to say the least, but in moments like these, it's easier to ignore our unpleasant past. He clears his throat along with any emotion on his face. "And there's the father I'm so used to. I have a mission for you as the future enforcer." "I live to serve," I answer flatly. "I live to kill. My life means the end of someone else's." The types of missions enforcers get sent on are anything but heroic. I've had dozens over the years, all part of my training to become the future executioner, commander of armies, and right-hand man to the king. Everything from battle strategies and executions to interrogations and torture fall into my line of work as the expected enforcer. All glimpses into my bright future. My informants know of a family harboring an ordinary near Loot Alley, Father continues, sounding slightly bored. "I need you to investigate and eradicate the problem." Eradicate equals execute. After the purging, when the ordinaries were banished to the scorches to protect Ilya from their disease, the king decreed that any remaining ordinaries found in the kingdom would be executed. 3 decades ago, he offered them a chance to survive if they could cross the scorches and reach the cities of Dar and Tando, on the other side, where they would be no harm. But the king's mercy only lasted that day of the purging, and I now deliver death on his behalf. "Of course," I say, running a hand through my hair and over my set jaw. The action doesn't go unnoticed. "Kai." He looks at me, almost gently. I haven't seen that look since I was a boy, and even then, it was a rarity reserved for the few times I pleased him during my training. No one envies the job of the enforcer. It's brutal. It's bloody. But the plague has given you a rare gift. Your ability as a wielder is very powerful, and you'll serve this kingdom well one day. He pauses before adding, "I've made sure of that." He has indeed. Training has been my whole life, my whole purpose. Rather than having a single ability to manifest and master, I've spent years learning how to control dozens, but I honed my body as much as my abilities, becoming a weapon myself. How to use and kill with every weapon at my disposal has been ingrained into my brain, a reflex I have refined. But I can't take all the credit. No, it's the king who made me what I am today. The king who took it upon himself to aid in both my physical and mental training. After learning my weaknesses, he ensured they were eradicated. And while I've learned to block out most memories of the training I endured as a boy, I can do nothing to ignore the image of my father's cool face paired with the same chilling words I've heard all my life. If you cannot endure suffering, you are unfit to dole it out, enforcer. I've fought in battles, initiated interrogations, and conducted torture, all while Kit sat in on countless meetings, devised treaties, and spent his days beside a kinder king than the one I know. His days consisted of education, tutoring, and far more pleasant time spent with the father he loved so much. As the heir, Kit's always been guarded, protected, and even getting him out into the training yard with me when we were boys was no small feat. When I look back at the king, his green eyes are already pinned on me. Kit's eyes. After father's first wife died while giving birth to his son, he married the daughter of a trusted advisor. Unsurprisingly, he quickly fell in love with my mother's caring and kindness, her bravery and beauty. I look like her, with my dark hair and light eyes, just as Kit takes after father, both green-eyed and blonde. I clear my head, tucking thoughts of the past away until the next time I allow myself to dwell on them again. My voice is dull when I finally ask, "When do I leave?" Those exact words poke at a memory, reminding me when I asked them before my very first mission. Not knowing that I would become a murderer that day. Not knowing I would watch a man crumple to the floor in a pool of his own blood. At dawn. Dawn came far too early for my liking, and before I know it, I'm making my way to the stables. The large white barn casts an even larger shadow in the early morning sunlight. Each wall is lined with stalls where the horses nibble on hay, looking up at me curiously. My gaze slides over the two imperials standing to my left, accompanied by 3 horses saddled for the journey ahead of us. I grit my teeth. The king pulled 2 guards from the rotation on Loot Alley as a safety precaution, though I'm more than capable of handling this on my own. But it seems that in a single night, father has suddenly grown to care for my well-being. It's only taken 19 years and the fact that I am now valuable to him. I shake my head and mount the horse closest to me, swallowing my pride enough to admit that it's wise for imperials to be with me in the case of a banishing. The trip to Loot is a long one, and we pass the time in utter silence. Streets slowly turn to slums as we head further into the city, and I could smell the large market alley before reaching it. The familiar scent of fish, smoke, and other mysteries welcome me as we head onto Loot. The echo of our horses' hooves, clopping down the uneven cobblestones, bounces off the walls of rundown shops lining the street. A few early risers dart out of the way, making room for us as they point and whisper. We turn left down a smaller street jutting off the main alley and head for a small wooden shack. I hop off my horse without hesitation and stuff the reins into the gloved hand of an imperial, letting him deal with securing the animal. If they must be here, they might as well be useful to me. I stride to the door, slipping a hand from my pocket to knock. I hear a thud from inside, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps before the door swings open, creaking on its rusty hinges. A huge, burly man with a thick beard and even thicker hair stares at the scene before him. I'm surprised he can fit through the doorframe. His blue eyes widen under his bushy brows as he looks between myself and the 2 imperials now flanking me. Prince Kai? The man looks astonished and flustered all at once. Hi, what an honor. His falsely cheery voice carries down the street, likely waking his neighbors as he reaches out to offer a handshake. His grasp is firm and calloused, much like my own. "Nathan, correct?" He nods, and I continue. "I had a few questions to ask you about an ordinary found here in loot. I'm sure that's not a problem." I watch him closely, searching for any indication that he knows what I'm talking about. Nothing. His face remains utterly expressionless. "Mind if we come in?" It's not a question, and he knows it. I already have my foot over the threshold before he steps away from the door. The house is no bigger than my bedroom back at the palace. On one side of the room, small beds are pushed together and lined crookedly against the wall. The kitchen resides on the other half of the room, equipped with a run-down sink, a chipped wooden counter, and a large table surrounded with two wide-eyed boys and a woman. A large, faded rug joins the two sides of the room, the only decoration and splotch of color in the house. Nathan clears his throat. "This is my wife, Layla." She smiles warmly, her white teeth contrasting against her dark skin, as she eyes the imperials shifting on their feet behind me. "And these are our boys, Marcus and Cal." Nathan points at each of his children, naming them off. Marcus keeps his eyes pinned to the table, not daring to look at me, while his younger brother, Cal, is far too curious to keep his eyes from darting to mine. I reach out with my power, making sure none of them are the ordinary hiding in plain sight. My wielder ability is especially helpful as the enforcer, making my job far easier and far more efficient. Nathan is a brawny, and I'm not the least bit surprised, seeing that he's a mountain of a man. I can feel Layla's power as a healer bubbling in my blood like champagne, while Marcus and Cal both possess mundane powers, Marcus with the lie-detecting ability of a bluff, and Cal as an enhancer with his heightened senses. "You know why I'm here," I say coolly. "Have you seen or heard anything about an ordinary hiding around here?" "No, sir, we haven't." It's Layla who says this, her soft voice steady. My eyes sweep over the house again, stopping on the sink. Bowls still sticky with porridge are piled within it, waiting to be cleaned. Five bowls when there are only 4 mouths to feed. Interesting. Well, then you won't mind if I take a look around? Once again, not a question. I casually stroll through the small house, stopping every once in a while to examine something more closely. I feel the eyes of both my imperials and the family burning into my back as I take my time perusing the home, hands casually in my pockets. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. I'm about ready to call this a dead end and a waste of my time when I step in the middle of the patterned rug, now faded from years of trampling feet. A creak sounds beneath my shoes. I stop and shift my weight, listening for the sound again. Sure enough, wood groans once again beneath the rug. Interesting. Though Nathan's face remains expressionless, the blood has drained from it, leaving him ghostly pale. "Lift the rug," I say dryly to the guards, never taking my eyes off the family. And that's when I spot an emotion I'm all too familiar with, the one that tends to accompany my presence. Fear. As the rug rolls back, I spot the outline of a trapdoor, blending in almost seamlessly with the rest of the dirty wooden floorboards. The thud. This is what I heard closing when I was outside. A sob escapes Layla when I kneel and swing the trapdoor open, revealing a cramped, dark space beneath. There, tucked in the corner and hugging her knees, sits a little girl. When she looks up at me, the fire in her eyes matches the bright red of her long hair. Plagues. She's so young. She can't be more than 8 years old, but the girl doesn't fight me as I reach down and lift her out of the damp box. I set her on the floor where she stares defiantly up at me, not a trace of fear on her small face splattered with freckles. I feel for any sort of power coming from her, just to be sure. Nothing. There is nothing extraordinary about this girl, because she's ordinary. Strangled sobs begin filling the room. No, no, no. Layla's shaky screams echo off the walls. "You can't take her. You can't. She's my daughter, please." The Imperials step between me and the raging family, but I push past them, annoyed. The boys are both sobbing now, hugging their mother's legs while Nathan looks stunned, silent tears slipping down his cheeks and into his matted beard. "Calm down and tell me where the hell she came from and how long you've been harboring her." My voice is low and stern, cutting through the chaos. The little girl standing before me looks nothing like this family with her freckles and flaming red hair. Not to mention that both Nathan and Layla are elites, meaning the two of them could never produce an ordinary. She's been here for 3 years. Layla's voice trembles, sobs racking her small frame. "We found her on the streets, so we took her in. We wanted a daughter. I couldn't have any more kids," she trails off, wiping at her face. "I'm one of the few healers in the slums, and she seemed healthy, strong. So, when we found Abigail, we finally got to have a little girl. Abigail. I wish I didn't know. Wish I didn't have to add another name to the endless list of those unfortunate enough to cross my path, unfortunate enough to cross the king." I heave a sigh. Here it comes. You know the law. More choking sobs fill the room, forcing me to raise my voice. By decree of the king, all ordinaries are to be executed. As for anyone harboring said ordinaries, they are to be banished to the scorches. I was in the middle of reciting the same rehearsed lines I've said dozens of times when a large, solid body charges at me. The blank stare he wore just moments ago is long gone, replaced by a hatred that contorts his face in fury. Nathan hits me around the middle and runs me into the wall, knocking the air from my lungs while bashing the back of my head against the hard wood. That's gonna kill like the plague tomorrow. I distantly hear a scream tear from Layla's throat, along with the Imperials' heavy footsteps as they run over to intervene. I shout at them, ducking under a punch aimed at my nose while the guards halt, confused. "I'll handle him myself." He throws another punch, this one intended to break my jaw. I dodge just in time to see his fist connect with the wooden wall where my face was, sending splinters flying, when his hand breaks straight through. My fighting instincts take over, and I don't even bother reaching out to use Nathan's power. With his fist still buried in the wall, I duck under his outstretched arm and pull out his wrist, twisting his arm behind his back to press it beneath his left shoulder blade. He grunts in pain before kicking back at my kneecap, hard. Pain sears up my leg as he spins out of my hold, raising his supernaturally strong fist. Ignoring the pain in my knee, I drop and sweep my leg in a wide arc, connecting with his ankles and sending him sprawling onto his back. Then I'm on top of him, pinning his arms down with my knees as I finally let his brawny strength claw to the surface. Knowing I won't be able to keep him down without using his own power against him. He thrashes, baring his teeth at me. "Shut up and listen to me," I pant. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. And personally, I'd prefer the easy way. She's my daughter," he bellows, a look of anguish in his eyes as he tries to tear me off him. "Well, clearly you have no regard for my feelings, because you want to do this the hard way." I sigh, cock my fist back and connect it with his jaw. His head snaps to the side, stunning him long enough to let me speak. "If you don't cooperate, even your wife won't have the ability to heal your broken body once I'm finished with you. So, I suggest you thank me for not killing you right here in front of your family, and do exactly as I say." Nathan stills beneath me, the fight seeming to drain from his eyes. I shift, crouching beside him to stare down at his defeated form. "Now, get the hell up before I change my mind," I murmur before standing to my feet. When he doesn't budge, I add, "Patience is about as foreign to me as mercy, so I wouldn't press your luck." At that, He scrambles to his feet and steps in front of his huddled family, blocking them from me, shielding them from a monster. I keep my eyes locked on the sight of them, taking in the tears spilling down their cheeks and sobs slipping past their lips as I bark orders to the imperials. They hurry to heed my commands, tying up the prisoners as I casually add, "Keep to the side streets." Clearly, I'm in a good mood today. Feeling merciful, if you will, I huff out the words. So I'd rather not have an audience. The imperials grunt their agreement, smiling slightly at my idea of mercy. Within a matter of minutes, Nathan, Layla, and their 2 boys are tied and shuffling behind the horses. They twist their heads around, hatred burning in their gazes as they eye Abigail tied and firmly held in my grasp. They know what happens now. My reputation is rather renowned. Stories of the murderous monster murmured throughout the streets. This is the part where I kill the ordinary, while the imperials escort the criminals to the scorches, where they will likely follow her into death. With its blistering heat by day and freezing temperatures by night, it's no simple feat to make it to the other side of the desert, where the cities of Dar and Tando lie. Not to mention that I've just sentenced this family to try and do just that with no supplies, no food, no water, and no hope. It's a far more painful death than their ordinary daughter will suffer. Please, I'm begging you, please spare her. Layla is shouting at me between sobs as she shuffles over the cobblestones behind the horses. She's just a child. An imperial reaches behind from where he sits atop his horse and strikes her across the face, cutting off her plea. Shut up, slummer. I rip my eyes from the scene, pulling the girl away and down the street. Her feeble attempts to wiggle out of my grasp would be comical if it weren't for the humorless situation we find ourselves in. She's eerily quiet for a child being dragged to her death. Most ordinaries are screaming by now, pleading and bargaining for their lives. But her struggle is silent, her stare piercing. I keep my eyes locked on the empty alleys we head through, wondering how familiar one must be with hiding everything they are in order to hide their emotions, even while facing death. I steer us down a shadowed alley, not yet touched by the faint sunlight beginning to paint the kingdom golden. The ordinary, Abigail, squirms, attempting to twist out of my grip for the dozenth time. I look down at her, amusement coating my voice as I say, "You are a persistent little thing, aren't you?" She huffs, causing her flaming hair to flicker around her face before she sends a solid kick to my shin. I would have been impressed with her form if it weren't for my growing frustration. I drop to a crouch in front of her so her angry green eyes can meet mine. Only when she lifts her leg to swing it at me once more do I say softly, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." She blinks, and right when I think she's heeded my warning, she stomps on my foot before trying to pull her arm out of my grip with no luck. And then she's squealing, flailing in an attempt to get away from me. All right, well, we can't have that. I slip a knife from my boot as I murmur, "You are not going to make this easy for me." At the sight of the dagger, she swallows, suddenly still. "Just put it in my heart," she blurts with her eyes pinned on the knife, voice delicate in the way that only a child's can be. I heard Mama say it's quicker that way. Did she now? I ask quietly. There are other quick ways as well, you know. And I know every single one of them. I watch her flinch as I bring the blade closer to her. Watch her eyes widen as she finally allows herself to feel the terror she's been desperately trying to hide. Then she takes a deep breath that sounds like something akin to acceptance before squeezing her eyes shut against the face of a monster in front of her. The dagger slices, cutting easily. The girl, Abigail, sucks in a shaky breath. After a long moment, a teary green eye peeks open. She blinks as the bindings slip from her raw wrists and land at her feet. Her gaze skips from her unharmed heart to my face before landing on the dagger in my hand. Aren't you gonna put that in my heart? My lips twitch. Listen closely, Abigail. I cut your bindings, so now you have to do me a favor in return. I need you to stay quiet and stop struggling. I search her face before adding, understood? I don't wait for an answer before I once again begin leading us down streets and alleys. She must have understood me well enough because she now walks stiffly in silence, making no move to break out of my hold. When the scorches come into view, so do the two imperials standing at the edge of it. They pay no attention to the family they are supposed to be watching head into the desert, now blurry figures dotting the sand. I peek my head out behind an alley wall, watching as the imperials talk idly. Before long, they're shrugging and spinning on their heels to head back down the street. Typical. I was counting on the guards' predictable laziness and failure to finish tasks. And I hadn't wanted the banished family paraded through the streets like they typically are, because then I would have a crowd to witness my treason. Once they've passed us, we slip onto the street and head for the sand. The family is far ahead, and since I'm feeling rather lazy myself, I reach out to grab hold of one of the Imperial's flash ability. He'll be out of my range soon, so I hurry to pick up the girl and dash into the desert. We've nearly made it to the family when distance has Flash's ability slipping away from me. Nathan startles at the sound of us behind him and spins, eyes wide when they land on Abigail in my arms. Layla is running towards us and has the girl wrapped in her arms in a matter of moments, with the whole family encircling the two of them. They sob as I step aside, feet shifting in the scalding sand that has begun spilling into my shoes. And then they turn towards me, eyes burning hotter than the sun beating down on us. Nathan only offers me one word, low and laced with hatred. Why? I slip out my dagger and cut the bindings around his wrists in one swift movement, meeting his gaze as I say, I don't kill children. Hypocrite. As if that is not exactly what I'm doing. In fact, I'm only prolonging the inevitable. But at least they will all get to be together in the end, a mockery of mercy that I only bestow upon children. I move down the line of stunned prisoners, cutting their bound hands free. I look them each in the eyes, most still glossy with tears, before turning to the little girl, the ordinary, Abigail. I walk towards her slowly and lower myself to one knee, sinking deep into the hot sand so we're eye to eye. Though she doesn't say a thing, her eyes speak volumes. She's only a child, and yet I see a devastating amount of determination behind her gaze. Perhaps you may not need powers to be powerful. I reach into my pocket, pulling out a small pocket knife from within. Its white handle is engraved with golden swirls, but its small blade is sharp. I hold it out to her. Every girl deserves something as equally pretty and deadly as they are, I say, urging her to take the knife. She eyes me warily before stretching out a small hand to pluck it from my palm. Use it wisely. I run a hand through my hair as I stand to my feet with a sigh. In accordance with our laws, and by decree of King Edric, I hereby banish you from the kingdom of Ilya for your acts of treason. With that, I watch as Nathan puts an arm around his wife, who in turn reaches out an arm for her children to huddle into. They turn as one, and I watch as they walk to their doom. Despite my swollen knee screaming in protest, I force myself to walk evenly. By the time I made it back onto Loot Alley, late afternoon had cast the street in a warm glow. I always enjoyed it down here. There's nothing regal about the slums of Ilya, and yet, it's refreshing in a way the stuffy palace never could be. My eyes sweep back and forth as I weave through the throng of people bartering, cursing, and shopping. I allow myself a moment to take in the sights and smells of loot, neither of which is very pleasant. Everything down here is dull, leached of color. The banners, the food, the people. By midday, the street always smells of sweaty bodies and questionable food. But despite it all, Loot is buzzing with life. The crowd pushes and pulls me in different directions, like a human current, and I fight to escape the wave of people. I finally break free to head down a smaller, less crowded alley where homeless crouch against walls, some begging for money, while others use their powers to entertain themselves. Though the slums are mostly home to the mundanes, I spot the occasional defensive elite sprinkled among them. The purple glow of force fields engulfing a few catch my eye, as well as a shimmer manipulating the light around him into a darting beam, occupying both himself and a stray cat. I keep walking as I look around, paying no attention to the path before me. And apparently, neither was the person who slams into my chest with a grunt. Instinctively, I reach out to steady the individual before they fall over from the impact, my arms wrapping around their waist. Her waist. The body I'm holding undoubtedly belongs to a female, though the mass of long silver hair brushing against my arms is proof enough. She's small but strong, leaner than most of the scrawny girls from the slums. I can feel it in the curve of her waist where my hand fits comfortably, though it's evident that malnourishment stripped her of most of the muscle she evidently once had. Her palm is pressed to my chest, where a thick ring hugs her thumb, and after a few seconds of studying her, while she attempts to steady herself, she heaves a shaky breath before meeting my gaze. It's like drowning in the ocean. Her eyes are the color of the shallow sea deepest corner, a clear sky as it begins to drift into night, the subtle shade of a forget-me-not, and like the hottest flame, her eyes are blue and full of fire. Her high cheekbones lead up to equally strong, dark brows, now slightly raised as she takes me in. Her ocean eyes widen, and I watch a faint flush rise to her cheeks when she realizes how closely I'm still holding her against me. She drops her hand from my chest, and, like the gentleman I am, I slide my hands from her waist with a smile tugging at my lips. Do you always fall into the arms of handsome strangers, or is this a new thing for you? I say, watching as a smirk that could rival my own lifts her lips, despite the bottom one being split open. Interesting. No, she answers, sarcasm dripping from her every word, only the cocky ones. She holds herself with a certain confidence that tells me there was once a time when she did not. And just like that, I am suddenly annoyingly intrigued. She clearly has no idea who I am. Perfect. I laugh at her remark and run a hand through my hair, doing little to tame it. She watches me closely, intensely, seeming to be just as interested in me as I am with her. I drown in her blue eyes. Every time our gazes meet, it's like ice meeting the hottest fire, like gray mist rising on the deep blue ocean. I look away briefly before saying, "Well, looks like I've made quite the first impression then." Yes, though I still haven't decided if it was a good or bad one yet. Her lips twitch into a slight smile, the type that makes a man's head turn just to get another glimpse of it in the hopes it was meant for him. And that small, precise gesture alone tells me I'm not the first she's practiced it on. My hands stray to my pockets, and I shrug indifferently as I lean against the grimy alley wall. "I caught you, didn't I?" She laughs, the sound warm yet sharp, playful yet pained, as though happiness isn't habitual for her. Her head tips back slightly, silver waves falling nearly to her waist as she looks up at me, eyes crinkled with laughter. I lean in slightly, daring to close some of the distance between us. "Maybe you should consider that detail before you decide, darling." And with that, I'm suddenly curious, suddenly wondering what power she possesses. So I reach out to her ability with my own. Nothing. I feel nothing. I study her face as I try again and again to sense her power. Normally, this would be the part where I either throw the girl over my shoulder and carry her to the dungeons to be further examined, or I simply kill her on the spot due to the mere suspicion of her being an ordinary. And yet, I don't move. You're tired, injured. It could be a mistake. Before I have time to decide her fate, she takes a step back towards the crowded alley. I'll keep it under consideration, darling. She gives me a small smile, holding my gaze while continuing to back away. And thank you for saving me from eating cobblestone. I seem to be cursed with clumsiness. Well, your clumsiness found me, so I'd hardly call it a curse. My grin only grows when she rolls her eyes at me before spinning on her heel and heading back towards loot. I finally allow myself to skim my eyes over her, taking in the fitted black pants and olive vest currently covered by silver hair. Nothing about the way she walks gives me the impression that she sleeps on the streets, though her ragged clothes and busted bottom lip tell me otherwise. I run a hand over my face, realizing I've been staring after her for far too long. So, I turn and begin heading down another small alley, now quiet in the setting sunlight. My thoughts occupied with the fact that I may have just let an ordinary walk free. But I'm not distracted enough to miss the 4 large shadows rising up on the alley wall beside me. "Listen," says a gravelly voice belonging to one of the men behind me. "All we want is that pretty pouch of coins on your belt. Hand it over, and no one needs to get hurt." I huff out a sigh, pressing the heels of my palms into my eyes. This day just keeps getting better and better, and that's when I feel it. With my attention finally on the coin pouch at my side, I suddenly notice how much lighter it feels than before. Before her. Why that little? A shadow shifts on the wall, lurching towards me. I spin around, ducking under the man's punch before landing one of my own to his stomach. With a grunt, he doubles over coughing while I take in the others. 2 brawnies, a blazer, and a crawler. Only the most desperate defensive and offensive elites find their way to the slums to beat down beggars for the few coins they have. With that in mind, I let the blazer's power seep into me, let the flames flick over my fists. Another brawny comes charging at me with a smile. They're always so cocky. And that's coming from me. I crouch low right before he collides with me, his momentum sending him rolling over my back to land hard on the cobblestone. My flaming fist connects with his jaw, and the sickening stench of burned flesh stings my nose. I look up to see the crawler scaling up the wall, intending to drop on top of me and pin my body to the ground. As he leaps from where he clings to bricks, I drop the blazer's power and take on the brawnies. My now supernaturally strong fist meets the crawler's stomach in midair, and he's thrown backward against the wall, before falling to the ground with a thud. The blazer stalks towards me, his mouth curled into a snarl. He chucks a ball of fire in my direction, and I leap to the side to avoid it. Not quickly enough. I curse colorfully as fire scorches the outside of my bicep, burning my flesh and slowing me with the pain. My mind is racing nearly as fast as my heart. I can't get close to him when he's forcing me to play defense and dodge his fire, but I know if I start throwing it back, we'll most definitely burn a street down. I am not in the mood for this. I let the crawler's power quite literally crawl to the surface before grabbing hold of it. Dodging balls of fire as I go, I run up the side of the alley wall and along the building until I'm parallel with him. In one swift movement, I leap from the wall, tackling him to the ground before quickly switching powers to raise a flaming fist at his face. "You're Prince Kai," he stammers. The future enforcer. Being so close, he's finally recognized me and my ability, now clearly regretting his decision to jump the prince. Unfortunately for you, I am. I cock back my blazing fist and a piercing pain cuts through my skull like a dull knife. The blazer's power flickers out, and I'm unable to do anything but clutch my pounding head, panting from the pain. I've grown very familiar with torture over the years, but this is like nothing I've ever endured. Through the haze of agony clouding my vision, I see a tall figure step into the alley. His hand is raised towards me, face grim, thin lips pulled downward in a scowl. Silencer. Impossible. My thoughts scatter, leaving nothing but pain to ponder. The silencer smothers my power, smothers me. They can do more than just strip you of your ability, making you no more than an ordinary. He's incapacitating me. My mind, my ability, my body. My vision goes blurry, spots swimming before my eyes. Fight it. I can't. I'm going to pass out. Die. Both. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. Fight. It. I slump to the ground, my head slamming against the stones. If Father could see me now. I'm fading fast. Even with all my training, I've never felt so weak, so powerless, so out of control. I take one last look at the man leeching me of my strength. I hadn't realized we'd drawn a small crowd until I see faces swimming in my vision. They have no idea who I am, an unsuspecting audience to watch me drift into darkness. Or worse, maybe they do know who I am. Maybe they're celebrating at the sight of the monster finally being put down, put out of his misery. And then something catches my eye. I blink away the blurriness long enough to see something glint in the light behind the silencer, the sun reflecting off a mass of silver hair. Adena is going to collapse from shock. Then she'll squeal, and I'll cover my ears. I've never stolen so many coins from one person. Not that I've had the opportunity, seeing that most of us in loot don't even have more than a dozen silvers to our name, let alone casually carrying them around. My mind is reeling as I slowly make my way down loot, now cast in shadows as the sun sinks behind the crumbling buildings. I shake my head in astonishment and take my time strolling through the market, allowing myself to admire my accomplishment. Several merchants are already packing up their stands, closing up shop for the night. Kids scuttle around the street, chasing one another, earning dirty looks and shouts from the shoppers still milling about. I cut down an alley, close to where I robbed the unsuspecting young man, and start heading back to the fort. I can't wait to see the look on Adena's face. I stop suddenly, eyeing a small crowd gathered farther down the street. Must be a veil. It's no surprise that the power of invisibility can inevitably aid someone at sleight of hand, using their ability to make cards disappear at will by simply holding them. I admire their deceitful little shows to earn some shillings. I'm about to head the other way when I hear gasps coming from the crowd, echoing off the crumbling buildings. Not the typical oohs and ahs that are present during magic tricks, but scared gasps of shock and surprise. When my curiosity gets the better of me, I find myself behind the throng of people, wedging between sweaty bodies and pushing my way to the front of the crowd. When I raise my eyes to the scene before me, I gasp, cupping a hand to my mouth. It's him. I saw him less than 10 minutes ago, and yet his shirt now clings to him with sweat as he prepares to strike the man pinned beneath him with a flaming fist. 3 other bodies litter the cobblestone behind him, slowly staggering to their feet before stumbling away. It's clear what happened here, obvious that these men had the same idea I did upon seeing the pouch hanging from the stranger's hip. But they chose a much more violent way to get the coins. Well, whatever is left of them. I see the stranger say something to the man before he raises his fiery fist, ready to strike. And then, something is suddenly terribly wrong. He's clutching his head, and I watch his cocky expression crumple into utter agony when a figure steps out from the shadows. I can only see his back, but he's tall and lean, raising a thin hand at the stranger gasping in pain on the alley floor. That's impossible. The crowd around me seems just as confused and awed as I am. With his hand still outstretched, the silencer takes small steps towards the black-haired figure now slumped on the ground. He's crippling his power. He's crippling him. I can see the stranger still trying to fight, trying to hang on to consciousness. The sight is suddenly so startlingly familiar, so sickening that I nearly stumble into the man beside me. This stranger and the man who raised me look nothing alike, and yet the image of one crippled on the ground seems to bleed into the other. I suddenly feel like that little girl again, standing idly as my father died beneath me. I look around, eyeing the gawking crowd. No one budges. Even with their fancy powers, no one makes a move to help. Either too afraid to do so, or too heartless to help. I know how this ends. I've lived it. When I look back at the stranger, it's my father I see. Taking a deep breath, I take a step forward. I won't stand by idly again. I couldn't save my father, but I'll honor him now by saving someone from the same suffering he endured. I'm probably going to regret this. I creep to the edge of the crowd and begin slinking up behind the silencer. I can practically feel the audience's attention shift to me, the throng of people silently watching. Crouching low behind the man, I spot a large, loose rock lying on the cobblestone and snatch it up. Here goes nothing. I draw up to my full height right behind him and silently raise the rock, intending to connect it with his skull. No such luck. He pivots, his black eyes boring into mine. With his attention on me, his crushing hold on the stranger drops, and I hear him gasping for air on the ground. The silencer lifts his slender hand towards me, his shoulder-length hair whipping in the breeze. He's trying to silence me. I almost smile. No such luck. Nothing happens, of course, considering I have no power for him to smother. He looks at his hand, then back at me, confused. The sight is almost comical, and that split second of hesitation is all I need. I grab his wrist, twisting his arm at an odd angle before driving my knee into his stomach. I hear the air whoosh out of his lungs as he clutches his arm to his body. And with that, my adrenaline kicks in, itching for a fight. It reminds me of all those late nights and early mornings with my father. Hours of training in the makeshift dirt ring behind our home. Both your mind, as well as your body, need to be trained. Conditioned, he'd say as I dodged his punches, all while answering his dozens of questions that tested my observation. I wielded any weapon we could get our hands on, while my father trained every part of my being, my mind, my body, my psychic ability. Until one day, he wasn't there to train me anymore. Wasn't there to protect me anymore. Wasn't there to continue teaching me how to protect myself anymore. The silencer recovers quickly, throwing a punch with his good arm and jolting me from my thoughts. I duck under it and aim a right hook at his jaw. His forearm flashes up to block my blow, forcing my arm down before grabbing it and spinning me so my back is pressed against his chest. And then the crook of his other arm is trapping me in a chokehold. I gasp for air, trying to remain calm. I fight the urge to claw uselessly at the arm crushing my windpipe, and instead whip my head back, connecting my skull with his nose and earning a sickening crack followed by the sound of gurgling blood. Blood. There was so much of it coating the floor of our small house resting between Merchant and Elm Street. Coating me, my father. I haven't been back since that night I ran. That night, the king plunged a sword through my father's chest. The silencer's hold around my neck loosens as he stumbles back, clutching his nose. But I'm not done yet. Not even close. I slip the ring from my thumb and slide it onto my middle finger before sinking my fist into the silencer's cheek, ignoring the sting in my hand. Dropping his hands from his gushing nose, he swings at me again, but I already knew it was coming. He always takes a step with his left foot before he punches. I block the blow and grab his shoulders as I bring my knee to his stomach once again. Before he's even caught his breath, I have his head in my hands, driving his already broken nose down into my awaiting knee. I channel all my rage into each blow. My rage at the king who slipped into my father's study, where he sat in his cushioned armchair, reading late into the night. Another right hook to the silencer's jaw. My rage as I vividly remember the sound of my father's cry when the sword tore through his chest, tearing me from sleep. I send a kick to the silencer's groin. My rage as I saw my father sliding out of his beloved armchair and onto the ground, slipping in his blood. I drop and sweep my leg in a wide arc, knocking the silencer to the ground. My rage as I held my father's hand, screaming and begging him to wake up. I sat there all night, pants soaked with blood, trying to puzzle out what could possibly justify killing him. But the king doesn't need a reason to kill. He needs a reason to let people live. I beat down on the silencer, barely aware of what I'm doing as my mind reels. I was numb. My hand clamped around my father's cold one, holding it while I rocked back and forth, sobs shaking my body. I brushed his brown hair from his eyes, straightened his bloody clothes, whispered about all the memories we shared while begging him to come back to me so we could make more. I was completely and utterly alone in the world. And when sunlight poured through the windows, shedding light on the gruesome scene, I couldn't stand to be in my own home. Not that I could afford to keep the house at 13 years of age. I tried to bury him. Tried so hard to drag him outside and give him a proper goodbye. Give him the honor he deserved. But I was so small, and he was so large, so heavy, so dead. I slipped and slid in the pool of my father's blood, unable to budge his body. So, I pulled the wedding ring from his finger, pushed it onto my thumb, and ran. The same ring I'm now using to sink into the silencer's cheek. If father could see me now. I hover over him, my rage finally beginning to fade as his black eyes widen. Blood streaks his face, gushing from his mouth, nose, and the other scattered cuts I've given him. I slide my dagger from my boot as something flickers in his eyes. Fear. He fears what he cannot control. And in this very moment, that something he cannot control is me. I bring the hilt of my dagger down hard against his temple, knocking him out cold. Still crouching over him, my gaze finds the gray one pinned on me. Emotions flash across the stranger's face as he takes me in, takes in what I've done. Shock, awe, confusion, and amusement of all things flicker across his face. I tear my eyes from him, returning my knife to my boot as astonished murmurs rise from the crowd. I turn, stunned, to find a mass of people staring. Merchants, women, and children gawk at the scene, all whispering and pointing. 3 imperials suddenly push through the crowd, hastily throwing people out of their way. I stiffen, preparing for some sort of punishment, maybe a few more lashes to decorate my back with. But they charge right past me, right past the unconscious silencer, and drop to their knees before the stranger. That's interesting, and apparently I'm not the only one who thinks so. The hum of whispers from the crowd grows louder, allowing me to catch bits and pieces of their hushed conversations. Silencer here in Ilya. It's Prince Kai who fought off 4 men. Fought the silencer without using a power. I freeze, heart pounding, barely breathing. Prince Kai. I'd never seen the man. Never thought I would. Never thought I would steal from him either. But I've heard enough about his reputation. How he's supposedly the strongest elite in decades. How he's the future enforcer, said to be calloused and calculating, yet charismatic and charming when he wishes to be, when he chooses to play the part. I've heard how he's a rare and powerful wielder, able to sense another's power and use it himself so long as they are close enough to him. The deliverer of death, they call him. The prince usually stays in the comfort of his cushy palace, so it's likely that no one recognized the stranger as anyone of importance. And when he does leave the castle, well, the people he visits don't typically live to tell the tale. I slowly turn towards the imperials huddling around the prince and watch, as he shoves past them, irritated by their smothering. He barks an order, telling them to take the silencer to the dungeons, as well as clear the crowd from the street. The prince exudes authority and power with every step, every word. Imperials scurry to obey him as they round up the mob of people and push them back out onto loot. His eyes find mine. Even with his countless injuries, he strides towards me, pushing the limp from his walk. A predator stalking its prey. And that's my cue. I try to slip into the crowd unnoticed, hoping to be washed away in the current of bodies, hoping he will forget that I saved him and let me leave quietly. No such luck. A calloused hand grips my arm before spinning me around to pin me against the alley wall. He presses both my wrists against the brick with strong hands before leaning in towards me. I writhe in his grip, but he doesn't budge. I'm not sure what I was expecting him to do, but it certainly was not this. Maybe offer a polite thank you, not an interrogation against a grimy wall. I would have never saved him if I knew who he was, what he is, what he does. I huff in irritation, sending silver hair blowing into my eyes and obscuring my view of his piercing gaze. Is this how you treat all the people who save your life, or is this a new thing for you? I grind out the words through clenched teeth, mocking his first ones to me. I wouldn't know, seeing that no one has ever saved me before. There's the ghost of a smirk on his face, offering me a glimpse of that annoying dimple. Well, let me enlighten you. When someone saves your life, a polite thank you will suffice. Maybe, he sighs and leans in closer, but not for those who steal from me. I think my heart stops beating. The prince knows I stole from him. The prince, the future enforcer, the deliverer of death. I'm dead as the plague, but my fear is quickly replaced by a much more welcome emotion, anger. I'm angry with myself for helping the prince who kills like it's nothing and grants his father's wishes like he is everything. I'm angry for finding him not repulsive, since the very kingdom he's so loyal to makes me sick with its twisted values and beliefs. He is the future enforcer, the executioner of innocence, of ordinaries, of people like me. Feeling reckless and rather emboldened with death a mere breath away, I say, so he's pretty and he has a brain. The ladies must love you. The smile I give him is anything but sweet. You know, you might make a good thief if it weren't for the fact that you were so easily fooled by one. He's smiling, amused, arrogant as ever. You do realize who you're talking to, right? A cocky bastard? I say innocently before biting my tongue. I clearly have a death wish. But to my surprise, he tips his head back and barks out an authentic laugh, the sound rich like the chocolate I occasionally steal and deep, like the shallow sea. I've been called worse, he murmurs, after composing himself, his hands still clamped around my wrists. Then the amusement fades from his eyes, quickly replaced by cool consideration. Despite you robbing me, I suppose I should thank you for your help. I almost laugh at that. Apparently, saving his life is comparable to simply helping. Although, I am curious as to why the silencer couldn't smother your power, along with why I can't seem to sense one from you. He's eyeing me like he did in the alley when I stole from him. Like I'm a puzzle he's trying to piece together. I blink up at him as realization rams into me. He has the rare ability to sense another's power and use it himself. He tried to sense my power in the alley, only to find that there was none. I'm dead as the plague. I look up at him, filtering the fear from my expression despite my frantic thoughts. I shrug my stiff shoulders, hoping the action looked far more casual than it felt. I'm a mundane, a psychic. A psychic, he echoes, disbelief dripping from every word. Tell me, what is it that you can do? He pauses, shrugs. I've never met a psychic before. Call me curious. I swallow the hysterical laugh threatening to bubble out of me. The future enforcer isn't curious. he's calculating. But he must be rather amused by me, otherwise I'd likely be dead by now. My power is a sort of sense, I say easily, reciting the rehearsed line. I can only sense strong emotions from others, getting flashes of information because of it. I look into his eyes, willing him to believe me, hoping he'll accept the answer and move on with his life, hoping that he will let me move on with my life. He looks to be fighting a smile. Is that right? And why would it be wrong? His eyes flick between mine for a long moment. Why is it I can't sense or use your power then? I swallow, trying to seem as though I'm not struggling to come up with a believable lie. My ability is unpredictable. Even I can't control what I see or when I see it. That, combined with the fact that my power has little strength as it is, must be why you and the silencer can't pick up on it. It's a mental ability. I shrug. I must be able to guard my head from those trying to get into it. I hold my breath, waiting for his answer, except that he doesn't give me one. He simply stands there, staring at me. I huff before blurting, "Go on. Ask anyone in the slums about me and my power." Better yet, I lean forward slightly. "You can ask your imperials. I had a lovely conversation with one of them, just this morning." His eyes narrow slightly before he slowly releases my wrists and takes a step back. "Maybe I will." Then the bastard smiles. "But I'd still like to witness these psychic abilities of yours for myself." "Prove it." If I had a shilling for every time someone said those words to me, I wouldn't even bother stealing anymore. He crosses his arms over his broad chest, eyebrows raised expectantly as he elaborates. "Read me. Or whatever it is you say you do." Then he leans in, gaze glittering with amusement. "Impress me, darling. My power isn't some party trick for your entertainment. But I'll play along, Prince." I give him a sarcastic smile before my eyes dart over his body. I'm not even sure I'll be able to pick up on anything with how unpredictable my ability is. "Is that so?" I ignore his mocking tone of voice and think of the calluses on his palms and the dozens of scars marring his arms. Well, obviously he's a fighter. You don't have to be a psychic to figure that out. I know I need to tell him something worthwhile if there is any hope of being believed. Any hope of surviving this conversation. He'll kill me without a second thought for simply the suspicion of being an ordinary. "May I see your hand?" The words are a demand disguised as a question. I hold my palm out expectantly, eyes flicking from his face to the hand at his side. Only the best performance will do for the prince. His expression is annoyingly neutral, never taking his eyes off mine as he places his hand in my own. "You know, I've never met a thief with manners. And it seems you're most definitely not the exception." I huff at that, ducking my head to turn my attention to the large, calloused hand in my own. "Is there a reason you insist on holding my hand?" My gaze snaps up to his cool one. "Don't worry. I'll try to resist kissing your knuckles, Prince." At the mention of his knuckles, my eyes sweep over them while his laughter washes over me. They're red and raw, not only from this fight, but also from one prior. Blood trickles down his fingers from the reopened scabs, though he barely seems bothered. "You were in a fight," I say. "And..." His scoff cuts me off. "I told you to impress me, not state the obvious." "I'm not talking about this fight." I sigh, dropping his hand to gesture around us, while simultaneously fighting the urge to punch that stupid grin off his face. "I'm talking about the fight before this one." I watch him closely, noting that nothing about his expression indicates whether I'm right or wrong. Plagues. He's not going to make this easy for me. My gaze drops briefly to his shoes. From this close, they don't look as shiny as I once thought they were when I spotted him across loot. In fact, they don't look shiny at all. Sand. His once polished black shoes are now covered in a thin dusting of sand, barely visible. As though he's been walking through the Scorches. And there's only one reason why a prince, specifically the future enforcer, would step foot in the Scorches at all. He banished someone. And that same someone put up a fight. I'm reminded of the 2 imperials missing from rotation today, and it all begins to fall into place. The prince needs guards to drag prisoners to the Scorches. Triumph begins to bloom in my chest, but I stomp it down. Something's not right. Normally, the town would be gossiping for days about who was banished and why. The criminals would have been paraded through the city, drawing a crowd to watch them walk to their death. But I haven't heard a single word uttered about this. Odd, considering they usually flaunt the banishes, use them as examples, show them off to warn the kingdom of what happens when you cross the king. He didn't want anyone to know about it. In a matter of seconds, I have all the information I need. You were somewhere hot. Sandy. I squeeze my eyes shut before adding, the Scorches. I peek up at him to find his eyes searching my face. You banished someone. Or a group of someones. At this, he stiffens, ever so slightly. His cool facade cracks. And in that small action alone, he's just confirmed that I'm correct. And that I shouldn't know any of it. But, I pause. You don't want anyone to know that, do you? I can't suppress my small smile as he peers down at me, looking both impressed and confused. And what emotion are you sensing all of this from? He asks quietly. I blow out a breath before taking a wild guess at what the future enforcer could be feeling, if the man has emotions at all. Is it guilt I'm feeling? Worry? He seems to still at that, giving me silent confirmation that I must be at least partially correct. Was that proof enough for you, Your Highness? I am well aware of the dangerous game I'm playing. And yet, I can't seem to forfeit my feelings of hatred for him and everything he stands for. But the smirk that lifts his lips tells me that he likes the game too. Plenty. Well, he exhales, shoving his hands in his pockets. Like you so kindly pointed out earlier, I should thank you again for helping me, darling. Paedyn. His dark brows raise slightly in question. My name is Paedyn, not darling. Paedyn, he echoes with a small smile, testing out the word. His deep voice makes my name sound so rich, so regal, as if I'm the one with royal blood pumping through my veins. We stare at each other for a moment, his icy eyes sweeping over my flushed face and doing nothing to cool it. You know, I can enlighten you on another way to thank someone for saving your life. I pause, suppressing a smile. Repaying your debt. He tips his head back and laughs darkly. Did you not get enough silvers when you robbed me the first time? I shrug as he continues coolly. Need I remind you that you said a simple thank you would suffice? Yes, a thank you would suffice. Not satisfy. And, well, that was also before I knew who you were. He begins, backing away all while reaching into his pouch to pull out a coin. With a flick, it's flying towards me. I barely have enough time to throw out my hand and catch it as he says, something to remember me by. He's several steps from me now, though his eyes are still locked on mine. Oh, and darling? Paedyn. You were right. He takes another step backward. I huff out a sigh. I'm not sure I should even listen to what you're about to say since you didn't address me by my name, which is... Paedyn, the sound of my name from his lips cuts me off. The ladies do love me. And with a wink, he turns and strides out of the alley. What the plague's happened? Adena's vigorously shaking me by the shoulders, making my teeth rattle. As soon as I got back to the fort, confused by the events of the day and very content to go straight to sleep, Adena pounced on me and demanded every detail. What? How do you? I'm stumbling over my words, wondering how she could possibly know that today was any different than the hundreds prior. She cuts me off, eyes wide with excitement and unanswered questions. Everyone's talking about it. The whole market is buzzing about the silver-haired girl who fought off a silencer. I stare at her, dumbfounded. She barrels on, her words fast and breathless. And the prince? She all but squeals. You saved the prince? Well, he doesn't seem to want to admit it. But yes, I saved the prince's ass. This time, she does squeal. But only after I stole from him. Her mouth flies open. It's so dramatic that I can't help but laugh. You what? In my defense, I say, hands raised in innocence. I didn't know it was him. Paedyn, the prince. Concern clouds her gaze, and she blinks about a dozen times before saying, He's a wielder. Could he? Could he sense you didn't have a power? I cut in before any more color can drain from her face, quickly explaining the events of the last half hour. Adena's eyes are wide, her curly bangs clinging to her lashes as I fill her in on everything from robbing the prince to fighting the silencer. After she learned of the lie I'd spun for the future enforcer, we talked quietly until the shadowy alley was swallowed in darkness. Okay, but is he really as handsome as everyone says he is? I give her a flat look that I doubt she can see, but know she can sense. That is the question you're dying to ask after everything we just talked about? That wasn't an answer, she sing-songs. I lay down on the rough carpets, stifling my groan with a scratchy blanket. Choosing to keep my mouth shut gives Adena all the answers she needs. She squeals, and this time I stifle her with a blanket. Dawn creeps over the rooftops, and I mimic it from below and tiptoe along the streets. Blending into the utter chaos that ensues every morning en route, it normally isn't hard for me to slip around unnoticed while slipping watches from shoppers' wrists or coins from unguarded pockets. But not today. Today, I'm not invisible. A thief's worst nightmare. Eyes. Dozens of them, all pinned on me as I pass. I hear them whisper to one another, pointing and gawking. A few begin clapping as I walk down the aisle of merchant carts, staring at me in awe. There are dozens of familiar faces in the crowd, having grown up surrounded and surviving by the same people. Friend is too strong a word for anyone who isn't Adena. But I've been building my reputation as a psychic for years, earning respect and witnesses to my abilities. The crowd seems to part for me, leaving a wall of people watching on either side. The Silver Savior, I hear a man whisper, before others echo his words. I stop, almost stumbling when my feet seem to stall. There, once blocked from my sight by crumbling shops, hangs another banner now in clear view. The people of Ilya have chosen. Introducing your contestants for the 6th ever Purging Trials, Kai Azer, Andre Vos, Jax Shields, Blair Archer, Ace Alway, Braxton Hale, Hira Colt, Sadie Knox. My eyes scroll down the list of names quickly, and then my heart skips a beat. Maybe a dozen, because the final name scrolled in large letters for all to see is far too familiar. Paedyn Gray. Blood seeps through my shirt. Some of it is mine, though most of it belongs to the silencer, which is what I still have to call him since the bastard refuses to even give up something as insignificant as his name, even despite how persuasive my actions can be. In short, I've been torturing the man for hours. I've made zero progress, and my small amount of patience is now non-existent. I'm annoyingly amazed at how much torture this man can tolerate. Although, I suppose that pain becomes a familiar thing when you are continually inflicting it upon others. You become numb to it. The silencer and I are starting to sound very, very similar. The dungeons below the castle are dark, dirty, and riddled with death, so at odds with the light, lush castle above. Cells line the walls, some filled with prisoners, others filled with the remains of previous ones. The mute lining each of these cells is the only reason I'm still standing before the prisoner, inflicting my own kind of unimaginable pain upon him. Since the material was created with the help of silencers before the purging, it's become extremely rare, forcing the king to hoard it. The scholars used transfers with their ability to place power into objects, putting the silencer's smothering strength within materials. Over the decades, this limited supply of mute has been used to craft cells, cuffs, and shields around the stands within the bowl arena. Other than the mute cell, I'm also accompanied by my father's loyal silencer. Because, ironic as it is, silencers can silence each other, assuming one of them is stronger. So, I work while the solemn silencer stands by, and the one at my feet screams. Without the protection that the mute and silencer offer, I'd likely be rolling on the floor in agony. Again, I can't stop replaying the scene in my mind, remembering the pain splitting my skull, the utter helplessness as I lay there, completely at the mercy of a mere man. But then she showed up. Paedyn, a mundane, a psychic, a fighter, a thief, and yet the only one willing to help for whatever reason. The only one able to help. Or so she says. Although I'm skeptical, her demonstration was impressive. She shouldn't have known about the scorches, the banishment, the fight, any of it. And seeing that I don't know a single thing about psychics, nor have I ever encountered one, I can't exactly prove her wrong. There are dozens of powers I have yet to witness, considering that my training consisted of mostly offensive abilities. Father made sure I never wasted my time, stooped so low as to learn the powers of lesser elites. But even in my haze of pain, the glimpses I caught of her fighting were captivating. She was captivating. Yes, she was skilled, but what intrigued me most was how much emotion she channeled into each blow. The passion packed in each punch, the rage rolling off her. I take one last look at the bloodied, slumped man in the corner of his cell before turning to my father's silencer. I'm done here, Damien. You're free to go. Wiping my bloody hands on my already bloody shirt, I step out of the cell to stride down the long hallway of the dungeon, passing glaring prisoners as I go. I make my way up the stone stairs leading to the main floor of the palace and nod to the imperials stationed beside the heavy metal door at the top. The king will be expecting an update of what I've learned from the interrogation, which happens to be absolutely nothing. I steel myself for the unpleasant conversation we're about to have. Far too soon, my feet find the worn rug that covers the floor of his study, a victim of being paced and trampled on for years. My eyes roam over the large desk and cushioned chairs before settling on the two individuals sitting near the stone fireplace. Relief washes over me at the sight of my brother. His blonde hair is messy, like he's been running his hand through it for hours, mirroring father's ragged look. Well, someone's been playing with the prisoner for quite some time now. Kit's tone is dark, but his eyes brighten when they land on me. I sigh before settling into my usual cushioned seat beside father. Crossing an ankle over my knee, I casually confess, and after all this time, you'd think that I would have learned something useful. The thud of father's papers hitting the table is a sound I've come to associate with disappointment. What seems to be the problem? He's being. I pause, searching for the right word. Difficult. It's the best I can come up with, earning a snort from Kit. Father looks less amused. In fact, he doesn't look amused at all, and he never really has when it comes to me. Then make him less difficult, Kai. He pinches his fingers to the bridge of his nose and closes his eyes, the action making him look older, warier. Either make him talk or kill him. I have no desire to keep the silencer alive if he has nothing to offer us. I glance at Kit, his face grave, void of its usual amusement as he watches father. When the king is distraught, Kit is devastated. It's that damn resistance, Father growls, his hand dropping from his face to reveal a grimace. Do you really believe this silencer is in line with the resistance? Kit asks, concern written in the creases around his eyes. Why else would he try to take a prince? The king shakes his head, staring blankly at the flickering flames in the fireplace. They're trying to attack me in any way they can. I thought I took care of them. Purged the fatals so they couldn't harm us, overpower us. He takes a deep breath before continuing. Apparently, I thought wrong. Some remain, and they've joined them. We need to put an end to this little resistance, Father spits, before downing the rest of the alcohol in his glass. They may want ordinaries to live, but in doing so, the elite race and power will eventually die. Ridding my kingdom of ordinaries is a sacrifice that must be made for the good of the people. But they are too damn selfish to see that. His gaze is piercing when it lands on mine. Make this silencer wish he were dead before bestowing that mercy upon him. I was already planning on it, Father. I'm drenched in sweat. Not an uncommon occurrence when training. My bloody shirt is long gone, and the sun beats down on my back as Kit and I circle each other in one of the dirt training rings. We go through our normal routine of sizing one other up and spewing nonsense before actually making a move to fight. The familiar pattern calms me, eases my restless mind for the time being. We dance around the ring, swords flashing, laughing as I nick him on the cheek with the sharp tip of my blade, an action he returns in kind. The swords are soon discarded, replaced by our powers. Kit easily hits targets with fireballs before dousing the burning wood with water. I, on the other hand, find myself indecisive and antsy, a terrible combination. I filter through the abilities of those surrounding me, attempting to choose one to train with. The rings are full of dozens of elites, all filthy from fights and slumped from sparring. I jump from a flash's power to a veil's before switching to a shell, though I've never especially liked the feeling of my skin turning to stone. I can't seem to focus, and that only frustrates me more. I hear the whoosh from behind before feeling the familiar wave of heat that radiates towards my back. I drop to the ground, barely avoiding a stream of fire that would have singed off my hair. What has you so distracted? I turn to see Kit grinning crookedly at me. Hey, I almost got you there. Wouldn't be so pretty with that mop of hair singed off your head now, would you? I can't decide if I want to laugh with him or wring his neck, a common predicament I find myself in. I guess beating you in the ring today was too easy. Now I'm bored. I shrug and grab some throwing knives from a weapons rack before beginning to pelt them at a tree a few yards away. Kit hums. Even with my back to him, I can hear the smile in his voice when he says, "Can't stop thinking about the girl who saved your life, huh?" By way of politely answering, I spin and throw a knife at my brother. It just barely skims past the side of his head, sinking into a target far behind him with a thud. He blinks at me. Touchy subject, I take it. I push past him and rip the blade from the wood. Now, what would give you that impression? I shrug, casually. She clearly wants nothing to do with me. I like a challenge. And besides, I add, clearing the thought from my head, it's not like I'm ever going to see her again. Kit's response is quickly drowned out by the sound of our names being yelled across the yard. We turn in unison, watching as a lanky boy bounds toward us. I see the flash of a white smile against dark skin before he disappears, simply winking out of existence. Before I even have time to blink, he's standing right before us with a goofy grin splitting his face. I curse under my breath. If you pop up like that again, I'll make good on that threat to stake you to the ground. What our brother means to say, Kit cuts me an amused look, is hi, Jax, how are you? The boy before me is only 15 and growing like a weed. He's gangly, clearly still trying to figure out how to work his long limbs. I don't know when he suddenly started growing up, and quite frankly, I don't like it. The small boy who lost his parents in a shipwreck is now the tall young man we've adopted as the little brother we never asked for. But after all these years, Jax hasn't just grown in height, he's grown on us. I'm good, Kit. How nice of you to ask. That crooked grin only grows when he looks at me, brown eyes blinking innocently. I hook an arm around his neck and pull him against my chest to scrub a fist over his short hair. He sputters, trying to shove away from me while I ask, "Aren't you going to ask how I'm doing, Jax?" When I finally release him, he turns to face me, rubbing his head with a grin. My bad. How are you doing today, Kai? He says this all with mock sincerity, and I can't help but smile. Kit cuts me off before I can tease him further. He's in a mood, he sighs before dropping his voice to murmur, "Careful, Jax. He's been playing with the knives again." I brush past them to pick up said throwing knives, needing to do something with my hands. I am not. I spin and throw a blade into a target, in a mood. Jax leans into Kit's shoulder, whispering. That's what he always says when he's in a mood. Excellent point, Jax. Plagues, I mutter. The two of you together is unbearable. They continue talking while I continue to pelt the target with knives. Better than throwing them at a person, so clearly I'm not in a terrible mood. I'm about to let another blade fly when a flash of color catches my eye. I hadn't even noticed Blair was training on the other end of the courtyard. But there she is, lilac hair blowing in the wind while she spars with Sadi. Well, a dozen Sadis, seeing that she's a cloner. They circle each other before Blair is suddenly surrounded by a barricade of bodies, all tall and chestnut-haired. It's chaos. Blair tosses a copy of Sadi through the air with her mind only for another one to jump on her back, trying to bring her to the ground. It's almost comical to watch, except that I know firsthand how deadly their powers can be, know what it's like to possess them. I look over to Jax and Kit, their eyes pinned on the fight as I move to stand in line with them. Before long, Blair is strutting between the rings with Sadi following behind. Blair's pale skin is in complete contrast to Sadi's dark complexion, opposites of each other in every way. Despite the two of them having grown up together, they couldn't be more different. Since Sadi's father is an advisor to the king, her family lives with the other nobility that are deemed important enough to reside in that designated wing of the castle. They stop in front of us. Kit slings an arm around Jax's shoulders before nodding at each of the girls. Blair, Sadi. Sadi offers us a small smile, genuine but reserved in the way she's always been. I wanted to congratulate you two on making it into the trials. Right. They announced the contestants today. It's no surprise that I'm in the trials. The kingdom and I have been aware of my fate since I was a young boy. The future enforcer must prove himself, and the trials force me to do just that. My next mission is the win the competition, and if I don't, I freeze, Sadi's words finally sinking in. I wanted to congratulate you two. I throw a confused glance at Kit, certain this must be some sort of mistake. The trials have always been my fate, not his. The future king rarely stepped outside the castle walls, let alone into a bloody arena where death could claim him. Father would never risk the life of his heir like that, but he certainly has no problem risking me and my reputation. Yes, at least two of the brothers will get to be together, Blair says with a smirk, her eyes flicking from me to... No, not him. What? His voice is filled with awe, his brown eyes wide with wonder. Jax. He looks between Kit and I, a smile spreading across his face. I did it. I'm in the trials. He's practically jumping off the ground in excitement, resisting the urge to blink around the rings out of excitement. I meet Kit's gaze, and his knowing frown matches my own. This is going to make the trials far more difficult. Now, I'll not only be protecting myself, but also a little brother who nearly faints at the sight of blood. But we say nothing to discourage Jax, pasting on smiles to replace the frowns pulling at our faces. Competing in the trials is a high honor that only few are granted, and Jax deserves to celebrate despite our sudden stress over the situation. "Well, it looks like we are all rivals now," Blair says with a smirk, letting her words sink in. Not a very sly way to inform us that both herself and Sadi will also be competing. We all stare at each other, Sadi silent and Blair smirking. Kit clears his throat, cutting into the conversation. "Do you know who else is competing?" Sadi nods, pulling a crinkled flyer from one of her pockets. Kit skims the names quickly before sighing. "Yep, there are only 3 names I don't recognize. Must be defensive or mundanes from the city." He hands me the flyer, and I quickly scan the list. My eyes snag on a particular arrangement of letters before my breath snags in my throat. There, at the bottom of the list, lies a name I've thought of far more than I care to admit. It's her. I might have stood there for hours, gawking up at the banner displaying my name in giant letters, if not for the mass of people gawking at me. They chose me. Or in other words, they chose me to die. And all because I saved that prick of a prince. A tap on my shoulder shakes me from my stupor. I stiffen at the sudden smell of starch and heave a sigh before turning slowly to face the imperial. He's young. My eyes flick between his messy red hair and brown eyes boring into mine, completely unbothered by my obvious disdain for his kind. He offers me a small, shy smile. Unsettling. In all my years, I have never met a kind imperial, and I doubt he is the exception. "You're Paedyn Gray, correct?" He gestures to the sign above us with a wave of his hand. "Who wants to know?" I blurt. He rubs the back of his neck. "The king? I'm here to escort you to the palace, where you will be staying until the trials are over." The unspoken words hang in the air between us. "Or until you die." Now? Right now? I hate how high and breathless my voice sounds, but I can't stop the panic rising up my throat. But the trials don't begin for another 2 weeks. He almost looks apologetic, and I hate it. The contestants always head to the palace 2 weeks in advance for training, interviews, and of course, the first ball. How could I forget how showy the trials are? His head whips around, red hair rippling like flames as he searches to see if anyone is watching. Then he leans in slightly, his next words a murmur. "I can only give you about 5 minutes or so before we have to leave." I don't hesitate before bounding down the street as fast as my legs can carry me. Adena. I skid to a stop in front of our little alley and swallow the lump in my throat at the sight of her tucked behind the fort, humming while she sews. I take it all in as I stride towards her. Every piece of garbage we scavenged together to keep us warm at night. Every scrap of clothing piled beside her as she works. Every curly piece of hair escaping the messy bun at the nape of her neck. Her dark brows furrowed over hazel eyes in concentration. Will I ever see her again? I try to push the thought from my head as I sink to the ground and pull her into a crushing hug. She gasps in surprise before quickly discarding her work and squeezing me tight. "Happy to see you too?" She laughs into my hair and pulls away, concerned by my sudden show of affection. "Are you okay?" I meet her eyes, memorizing the specks of gold flecking them. "I'm leaving, Adena." "What?" The look on her face is equally scared and skeptical. They are sending me into the trials. The people want me there, apparently. I'm rambling. For entertainment purposes, of course. I offer her a weak smile, but nothing can stop the look of horror from spreading across her face. She brings a soft brown hand to her mouth as she breathes. "Oh, Peyton." She trails off, not knowing what to say, what to do. "But you don't have an ability." "It's gonna be all right," I say, trying to convince her as well as myself. "I'll be. Don't you dare say you'll be fine," she huffs as anger temporarily swallows her fear. "Paedyn, the trials are deadly enough, but if they find out about what you aren't, they will. Kill me," I finish for her. I know. The fear floods back into Adena's eyes, crashing into her so hard, I worry she may crumble. A sad, small smile lifts my lips as I take her in. I'm leaving the only person who knows me, the only person I can truly trust. She's been a constant in my life, an anchor that I'll be drifting without. But this is for the best. It's safer for her without me here. "I can do this," I say softly. "I was made to do this." Adena nods numbly, knowing this already. Knowing how my father began training me when it became apparent to him that his little girl was an ordinary doomed for death. She knows how at the age of 5, my life changed before it had even begun. Father sat me on his lap, whispered that I was different. That I had to pretend to be something I wasn't if I wanted to grow up with him by my side. "It was our own little game," he said. A game of pretend. A game in which he'd already chosen the perfect role for me to play for the rest of my life. "What's a psychic, Daddy?" That question is still so vivid in my mind, though it was over 13 years ago when I'd asked it. Father had just chuckled softly, a seemingly simple sound that I wish I could have memorized. A psychic is a fancy word for someone who's observant. A power that can be faked with years of practice. Something you don't have to be gifted with, but a skill you can learn. At that, he'd bopped the tip of my nose with his finger. "And I'm going to teach you. That way, we can always be together." If only death had any regard for promises. I'm suddenly pulled into another suffocating hug. "Come home to me, Paedyn. Please?" Adena's voice is muffled against my hair. "You're all I have left, you know." I wish more than anything that those words weren't so terrifyingly true. When Adena's mother fell ill, it was likely my father who tried to treat her. Healers are uncommon around the slums, and the people needed him as much as they loved him. But even elites have their limits, while it seems death knows no bounds. And since Adena never knew her father, he could have been the hazel-eyed merchant I robbed this morning for all we know. A pained laugh slips past my lips. "And you are all I have left, Adena." "Good." She sniffs and pulls back to look at me. "Then you better find a way to make it back to me. If anyone from around here can make it out of those bloody trials, it's you." The look she gives me is defiantly determined. At worst, you lose and come home. At best, you win the damn thing. I huff out a laugh at the absurd thought. "I'll try my best for you, Adena." After swallowing the lump in my throat, I add, "I'll visit you. I promise. I'll find a way. Walk if I have to." She smiles, giving me one final hug before waving as I head down the alley. Standing to her feet behind the fort, she shouts, "This is not a goodbye. Only a good way to say bye until I see you next." It's the same cheesy line she said for years. And yet, this is the first time it sounded like a goodbye. "You're my favorite, Adena." I call back to her, voice breaking without my permission. "And you are mine, Paedyn." Smiling, I finally tear my eyes from her and begin hurrying down Loot. Considering running away from the Imperial, the trials, everything. But the reckless thought is gone as quickly as my feet pounding against the cobblestone. I'll be hunted down and killed if I run. At least with going to the trials, I have a fighting chance at survival. Sort of. Panting, I make it back to the Imperial, who is now joined by a small girl assessing me timidly. "Ready to go?" he says, looking between the two of us. I humor him by nodding, despite having no choice in the matter. We head down Loot in silence, passing crowds of people as we walk, all clapping and shouting their congratulations at us. As we near the end of the long street, I see a dark coach awaiting, paired with an imperial sitting atop the driver's bench, with his white uniform nearly blinding in the sun. Our red-headed imperial opens the door for us before he too joins the guard on the bench. The girl scrambles in, and I follow, peeking my head out the door for one last look at Loot Alley, before the coach seals me inside, separating me from my former life. Cushioned black seats await us, and I'm almost too busy admiring the fanciest thing I've ever seen to notice the boy sitting across from us. His brown hair is neatly styled on his head, just above his dark green eyes that are currently pinned on me. By the condition of his clothing, I can tell he comes from a nicer area of the slums and likely falls into the defensive tier of elite. The coach lurches forward and I cling to the wall. I already don't like small spaces, let alone small places that move. I steady my breathing, forcing myself to calm down before I look back at the bored boy. "Hi," I say, trying to ease the tension. "I'm Paedyn. I know who you are." He cuts me off, immediately deciding that staring out the window is far more interesting than our conversation. "You're the girl who saved Prince Kai." His tone suggests that this is not, in fact, precisely what happened. As if dozens of people didn't see it happen. I open my mouth, allowing words to spew out before I can think better of them. "Correct. And clearly you don't have a reputation, or I would have heard of you by now." His eyes snap to mine, nostrils flaring. "I'm Ace. Ace always." He says this proudly, straightening the collar of his shirt as he continues. "I'm an illusionist. Rare. That's why I'm here." His smile is as cold as his eyes. "And I'm going to need those 20,000 shillings to finally get me out of these slums, so I'm sure I'll be making quite the reputation for myself soon enough." I've never encountered an illusionist, but I've heard enough about them to know he's dangerous, even as a defensive. "And who are you?" he asks the girl beside me. "What can you do?" She glances between the two of us, looking as if she wants to disappear, and I almost laugh when she does. She's there 1 second and gone the next. I stare at the empty seat beside me before her form reappears, materializing in a matter of moments. "Vale." "I'm Hira," she says shyly. Her deep brown eyes meet mine as she brushes a strand of silky black hair behind her ear. Something about the action seems vaguely familiar, making me wonder if she's one of the popular Vales that perform street magic. "I'm Paedyn," I say over the rumbling of the coach rolling over uneven cobblestones. "What's your power?" she asks curiously. "Psychic." I shrug casually. I mostly sense strong emotions that give me flashes of information. It's not much, but it's all I've got. "Liar. You haven't got anything." "Really?" Her eyes go wide, probably shocked that someone with such a weak mundane ability could make it into the trials, let alone defeat a silencer. "It's an uncontrollable mental ability, and the only reason the silencer wasn't able to get into my head when I saved Prince Kai." I toss a pointed look at Ace. I guess that's why people want me in these trials at all. Ace the ass snorts. "They only want you in the Purging Trials to watch you die, mundane." I stare at him, and after a long moment, a small smile tugs at my lips. "Oh, most definitely. But at least they will be watching me at all."